So if I can get all the board, let's see, are we missing?
Almost all. We got enough.
We good? We good? Is everybody here? All right, so we're going to call this meeting to order. Hey there you are. And we're going to meet the board members, the new student board members formally, but we want to get the meeting started. So if we can get everybody seated, and Mr. Shackelford, where did he go? There you are. I'm going to ask, gosh, the board members, they're real chatty tonight. All right, I'm going to ask Mr. Shackelford if you would come forward and lead us in the pledge.
Well, he's coming up, Madam Vice President. The video is not on. I got a text from one of our citizens, and the sound.
To the flag.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Shackelford. All right, we are now at 1.3, adoption of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Dr. Volkemer? No changes? All right,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carried. We are now at 1.4, inspirational message by Dr. Barbara Flores.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Given that we just celebrated Labor Day and that it's Hispanic Heritage Month, I would like to honor two women, two Latina women. Miss Lucy Parsons, who was an amazing woman, who was born in Texas around 1853, who fought to help the poor and exploited for almost 70 years. She was of mixed Black, Native American, and Mexican heritage. Lucia Eldin Gonzalez usually called herself Mexican. At 16, she married Albert Parsons, and they moved to Chicago, quickly becoming involved in labor organizing. The denial of an 8-hour day, which we all prize now, we now have 8-hour days. They led 80,000 workers to fight for us to have 8-day hours to work and fair labor practices. So I want to honor her since she was such an incredible labor organizer and a Latina, Afro-Latina, indigenous Latina, and fought for our rights as workers. And I also want to recognize Dolores Huerta. Dolores Huerta was born here in California, and she is responsible for co-founding the United Farm Workers Union, and she was the one responsible for negotiating the first labor farm workers contract for fair wages. I was, 16 years old? No, I was 18 years old, or 19 around the time that she did it. And, I come from farm worker roots. My mother's family were farm workers. They were migrant farm workers. My dad's side, they were carpenters and lumberjacks, but during the Depression, they had to also work in the fields for very poor wages. Around 6 years old, I've said this before, I was alongside my mother picking grapes. We worked for 4 cents a tray. She would say, "Hurry up, Bobby," that's my nickname, because we got to earn $20. We have to pick 500 trays. So to earn $20 a day, we had to I helped my mom pick 500 trays a day in the very hot sun. just so that we could earn $20. So I want to give this tribute not only to Lucy Parsons, Dolores Huerta, but to my mom and to my grandparents, my family, for working so hard and for providing fruit and vegetables to all of us from their work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. That was nice. Thank you so much. All right, we'll now move to 2.0 special presentations. 2.1 is swearing in ceremony for the 2019-2020 student board members. Anessa Castro, Arroyo Valley High School, Kyla Durhart, Indian Springs High School, and Eric Morales, San Bernardino High School, will now be sworn in as student board members for the 2019-20 school year by Dr. Volkermer. After the swearing in, they will take their seats at the dais. Will the student board members please come to the front? And board members, would you like to join them?
We're going to go right up by the podium.
Well, we're going to join and show our support.
I just want to make sure the camera can see them. Are we okay camera-wise? Okay, good. All right, well, what a privilege this is for me. I was thinking back, last year, I got to do this with our student board members as well. Dr. Marsden was not here for that board meeting. I can't remember why. I think he was on vacation with his family. He's on vacation with his family this week as well. So I get to do this again, so I'm really excited and thrilled to have you guys coming on board. So we're going to give you the oath of office, and this is the same oath of office that our elected school board members take, as well as many of obviously our elected officials. So I'm going to have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. So raise your right hand, repeat after me. Good job, you're 1 for 1. So I'm going to say, I state your name, so you put your name in there. Okay, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. You are officially student board members. Congratulations. Let's give them a round of applause. Shake the board's hands. And Madam President, if we could have you, we're going to do a little signing ceremony after you say congratulations. If you want to give them those. All right, we're going to have you come on over here and sign. You each have one. Eric, yours is here. Kyla, right in the middle. And Anessa to the left. Where did Anessa go? Anessa, we're going to have you sign. And
Okay.
President Rosales Medina, we need your signatures as well.
All right. It's official. He's so proud of our student board members. Dr. Flores, did you have comments?
Yes. I wanted to state that Lucia Gonzalez Parsons led the strike along with her husband of 80,000 workers.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't a protest, it was a strike.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's from this book, 500 Years of Chicana Women's History. And it has indigenous women and Afro-Latina women and Mexican-American women as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
History, it's important to know it. Okay. Although our president is here, she is getting situated, so we're going to continue to move forward. We have 2.2 and 2.3, and I'm going to ask Dr. White if we could just have you do 2.1, and Dr. Flores, if you can do 2.2, followed by Dr.
I mean 2.2.
Or 2.2, I'm sorry, 2.2 and 2.3. No, I want you to do, yeah. I want you to read it.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice President. 2.2, Resolution in Recognition of 16 de Septiembre, prepared by, whereas the 16th of September is an important date in the history of Mexico that marks the anniversary of the issuance of the Grito de Dolores, in which Father Miguel Hidalgo defied Spain and called for freedom and justice for the common man, and whereas this date of historical significance for Mexican people and others of Latin American ancestry is celebrated by many members of this community, including students of the San Bernardino City Unified School District, and therefore it be resolved that the Board of Education of the San Bernardino City Unified School District duly notes the celebration of 16 de Septiembre on September 16, 2019, and directs appropriate activities for its observance to take place in district schools. So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? All right. So moved. 2.3.
Resolution in recognition of Native American Day. Whereas the Southern California region was home to many generations of Native peoples with distinct cultures and traditions that bound them to the earth and its inhabitants. And whereas September 27th, 2019 is Native American Day, a day celebrated in California for many years by its 107 federally recognized Indian tribes. And whereas educational leaders throughout the region are encouraged to involve themselves and their schools in statewide focus on improving the education provided to our children about the local indigenous tribes of Southern California. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of San Bernardino City Unified School District duly notes the celebration of Native American Day on September 27th, 2019, and encourages all educators to commemorate this day with appropriate instructional activities. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carried. All right, we will go now to 3.0, closed session. Are there any comment? Okay, we have no closed session. All right, we will adjourn for closed session and we will be reporting out.
All right, sorry for the delay. We're coming from closed session. I'm going to go ahead and open up from closed session and read out. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the appointment of the following employee: Salam Mikomi. Hope I said that okay. Mikomi Salam. Assistant Director, Special Education, effective date, work year, and salary to be determined. Funding 802. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second. Welcome.
Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Did Dr.
All
Flores move
opposing?
and second it? Oh, okay.
You moved and I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion carried. Congratulations on your position. You'll do
And-
amazing things.
And welcome.
Welcome, welcome. We will now go to 4.1, action reported, oh, I already just did that one. 5.1, which is tentative agreement, 2018-19, reopener, Article 5, Article 6, wages between San Bernardino City Unified School District and California School Employees Association, and it's Chapter 183.
So moved.
Okay, are there any comment cards for this one? Okay. Just give me a second just to make sure I'm right. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion carried. Be resolved that the Board of Education adopts a tentative agreement, 2018-19 reopener, Article 6, wages between San Bernardino City Unified School District and California School Employees Association and its Chapter 183. Let's go ahead and go to, which one's next? Is it 6.0? Okay, student board members' comments, and we're going to have We're going to start with Ms. Castro, and then right after Ms. Castro, Ms. Duhart, and then after that, Mr. Morales.
Okay. My name is Inessa Castro. I'm from Arroyo Valley High School, and I am very happy for this opportunity and very glad I could be here.
Welcome. Welcome. And then Ms. Duhart.
Hello, my name is Kayla Duhart. This is my school, so I'm from Indian Springs High School. I just want to say it's an honor to be here, and I thank you guys for giving me this opportunity.
Great. Welcome and congratulations.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Morales. I'm from San Bernardino High School, and it's a great honor to be here tonight. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. We're
Madam
excited to have
President?
you. Yes, Dr.
Can we ask them to tell us all the schools you've been to?
Since elementary.
So I grew up in San Bernardino. I went to Muscoy Elementary School. I went to Cesar Chavez Middle School, and I've been at Arroyo.
Nice. Okay.
Well, I came here 4 years ago, so I've only been to 2 schools. I went to Del Rosa Christian School. It's a private school in 8th grade, and then from high school, I went to San Bernardino High School. all my
And then
4
prior to
years.
that, where were you at?
Prior to that, I was in Orange County.
Okay, nice.
So I first started off in Colton. I went to Woodrow Wilson Elementary School, and then we moved, well, I was born in San Bernardino, but then we moved to Colton. And then for middle school, we moved back here, and I went to across the street to Curtis Middle School, and then I've been here all 4 years, Indian Springs.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And you're part of the board, so your voice is very important to us as well. So if there's items on the agenda that you would like to also voice your opinion, just let us know. Okay? All right, we welcome you. Let's go to 7.0, public comments. This is the time during the agenda when the Board of Education is prepared to receive comments from members of the public on any matter within its subject matter jurisdiction. When recognized, please step to the podium, give your name, and limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. Please monitor your time, and the time should be right behind us to your left. Dr. Volkemer?
Thank you, Madam President. The board welcomes Trayvon Martin from CSBA as our first speaker.
I guess I drew the lucky card today, so I don't have to stay here all night. Good evening, President Rosales Medina, Vice President Rogers, Board, Deputy Superintendent Volkemore, and Cabinet. My name is Trayvon Martin. I'm the Public Affairs and Community Engagement Representative for the California School Boards Association. It's so nice to be in front of you guys today. I haven't been in front of you guys in quite some time, so there's a lot going on at the Capitol. As you know, the legislature will adjourn for the year on September 13th. So there's a lot of things that people want to get done before that happens. A lot of you guys received my email a couple weeks ago asking you to contact your assembly member, urging them to pass CSBA's ACA in order for them to put our full and fair funding measure on the March 20th, 2020 ballot instead of the November 2020 ballot. This is important because we all know the November 2020 ballot is going to be very, very crowded. You have split roll, you have maybe some bonds, and some other things that are going to happen on the 2020 ballot. CSBA wholeheartedly supports split roll. We haven't taken an official position. Those of you who are on delegate assembly, Vice President Rogers, Dr. Hill, and Dr. Flores will have conversations and vote on that in December at the annual conference. Delegate assembly.
Split what?
Split roll. It's a tax. We call it split roll because they tax two tax brackets. It doesn't tax homeowners or residents. It's a millionaire tax and a multi-million-dollar business tax. And it's a split roll because part of the funding goes to K-14 education and the other part goes to cities. So about $7 billion of that will go to K-14 schools. So you think, we have 1,000 school districts in California and over 1 million kids in California, and then you have higher ed, so that $7 billion gets chopped down pretty.
So
pretty
you're
fast.
saying roll, R-O-L-L?
Yes.
So you mean property tax roll? They're going to split the top property tax roll? Is that what they're saying?
Yes. So it's not the property tax. It's not property taxes. It's taxes on millionaires and taxes on businesses. It's not property taxes. So you'll of course hear attack ads in the commercial saying, you know, protect our homeowners, protect our tax base. But it is a millionaire tax and a corporation tax. So. Again, about $7 billion of that will go to K-14 education. CSBA's full and fair funding proposal actually raises $15 billion for K-14 education. And again, that's a tax on millionaires and corporations over $1 million. So we are hoping to get that as we will take $7 billion, but $15 billion is a far better number, especially when economists and expert researchers have said that California schools actually need about $30 to $40 billion in order to catch up and close the achievement gap in California. So I did some calculations, and with your current enrollment, if we get ACA on the March ballot and it passes by the voters, we did some polling, and even with the worst case scenarios of voters, 64% to 65% said they would pass a education tax. So that would in 2020 bring about $2,400 per pupil, and that's about $120 million in a annual budget increase for San Bernardino City Unified School District. So it's a significant chunk of the change. So I do appreciate, I know Vice President Rogers and Dr. Hill did have conversations with their assembly members, so we do appreciate that. Moving on to the famous 328 late start bill. As you know, it's headed to the floor. CSBA staff had conversation with the governor's office today, and if 328 does pass the assembly floor, the governor will sign it into law. So we are hoping that it doesn't have the votes to pass. I know Dr. Hill is like smiling like, yes, I want it to pass. We believe it most likely will pass. I think the votes are there. So that is going to
Can I say something really quick? I'm going to interrupt really quickly, only because my son did say, Mom, we have to have a later start time. He's in 11th grade and he's struggling to get there in the morning. So, and I was like, but you have to also, anyways. So now that you just said that, just reminded me.
Yeah.
But Mr. Martin told Dr. Hill not to support it and to write a letter saying she doesn't support it. That's what your letter told her to do.
I listened to me first. Thank you.
As you know, CSBA doesn't refute the science behind late start. We do refute the unfunded mandate. It will cost districts millions of dollars in transportation issues in order to implement late start. So that's our reason for opposing late start. And as you know, there's a ACA bill, I think it's 48, Assembly Bill 48, that is a facilities bond. There's talks around the legislature on changing up how that facilities bond is going to work. It's going to limit districts. It could limit districts' amount of money that they could apply for every year, holding up a lot of projects. And then there's some other talks about it not just being a K-12 facilities bond, it's going to be a K-14 facilities bond. So a lot of things are happening with it. Stay tuned for some further developments. I will keep you guys abreast of that. CSBA right now does support 48, but we might oppose it depending on the final wording of the bill. So thank you guys and have a great evening.
All right, thank you so
Mr.
much.
Martin.
But hold on, Mr. Tillman has a comment.
I figured this can be a conversation back and forth. You come give us a message. I want to send a message back with you to CSBA.
Yes.
They might want to consider the one for late start and start the conversation. If the state does approve it, there's a cost associated with it, and CSBA should be asking the state to make sure they don't create an unfunded mandate. They have money now, and you can do this. I mean, just like you send a letter out saying how to tell them your assembly people, you should tell them to call your assembly person and say, if you're going to do this, then make sure you fund it, because there's going to be a cost associated with it.
Yeah.
And the
Mr.
sooner
Til-
you start that conversation, the better it is for us.
Mr. Tillman, we started the conversation last year when Portantino introduced late start. Our lobbyist was very adamant about the state not requiring an unfunded mandate. We did ask for funds. We also asked for a delayed start time, a 2-year implementation. As you know, Portantino is the chair of the Appropriations Committee. He did not like those amendments, and because he is the chair of the Appropriations Committee, he has a lot of power over bills coming to his committee, and so legislators do not want to kind of ruffle his feathers. We've asked several times. We did it this year, and in our meeting with the governor this morning, we also echoed making sure if he does sign it, asking him to say, hey, this is an unfunded mandate, we need to fund this.
Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. The board welcomes Nancy Sanchez Spears on VAPA framework update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
Good evening, President Medina and Dr. Volcomer and the rest of the board. It's been a long time since I've been here, so I'm not quite as comfortable as I used to be. I just want to present the work that we did with the California Department of Education on Visual and Performing Arts framework. And I want to thank the district, the board, my immediate supervisor, who is, oh goodness. Why can't I think of her name? No, it's, my coordinator.
Don't fight it. Just keep moving. Trust me.
Anyway. Pardon me? No. Scott is not my immediate supervisor. Gosh. Anyway, so many things to think about right now. Anyway, Rebecca Clark. Duh.
Oh, yeah,
Rebecca Clark,
okay.
who is the coordinator for elementary physical education, and has been very supportive of my work with the Visual and Performing Arts framework. We spent in-house in Sacramento approximately 84 hours working on the framework. I cannot tell you how many hours because I didn't document afterwards at home, reading and writing and revising. This is what the original framework was. It's 200 and some pages. This is what we have. It's 500 back-to-back pages. It's very comprehensive. It is easy reading, believe me, but it's very comprehensive because it includes all of the necessary elements for teaching visual and performing arts to all students. One of the things that I want to call to your attention is that we not only expect the supplemental programs to meet the visual and performing arts. Visual and performing arts is supposed to be taught K through 12. And all of the arts are supposed to be made available. Now, access to the arts, we know, is not strong throughout the state. We have an excellent music program. Our program, I bragged about it all the time I was up there, and people wanted to come down and see it. I said, well, come down and take a look. So we have started, and I think we probably have the best elementary through high school music program in the state, and that's just my opinion. But we can do better. We can do this with the visual arts. We can do this with dance. We can do this with theater, and we can do it with media arts, which is the newest addition to the visual and performing arts. It was quite exciting to be able to work with all these people from the different art areas. And everyone was so supportive of everyone else. It was just incredible. And the work we did, really, it should not go on a shelf. It should be read. It's a lot. I don't think they're going to print it. It's going to be available online for viewing and public commentary. So please go online when it is available. They said probably October 1st. And if you only want to look at the segment that involves your area or your area of interest, please look at it, read it, and make comment. The one thing you will not find that you will find in other frameworks is the specific populations that we address in each art area. The English language learners, the special education students, all of the students, it's all embedded in the instructional phase of each art. So I feel that it really does the best job of including everyone in instruction. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Our next card is for Mr. Navarro, but Mr. Navarro, you put that you wanted to speak at 8.1. Do you want to speak now, or do you want to wait till that item is up? I'd like to wait. Okay, thank you. Then next we have Myra Ceballos regarding Richardson Prep High. Ms. Ceballos? Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good evening. So I think I'm going to wait for a little bit. Get everybody up here. So I only have about 5 minutes, so I'll make this brief. Okay. Good evening, board members, superintendent, parents, and community at large. My name is Myra Ceballos. I am Abel Martinez's mother. Get over here. This is my son. We have not had the pleasure of meeting all of you in person, but I've been in contact with most of you here via email. Some have replied, thank you. Brief summary, Abel's my only child. He's 12 years old, and ever since he started formal education, it's always been a struggle for him and a challenge. At first, I was not sure what was going on. I was less knowledgeable about mental health and the various disabilities that impact students in their education. I began to get teacher reports and school reports that seemed minor. They would say things like Abel is distracted, out of seat often, defiant, not completing work in the playground, and during lunch passing periods, he seemed to not be able to socialize properly with peers. I only received complaints from the school as to what my son was doing wrong. I never, and I emphasize never once, heard about how the school would help or provide support for Abel in regard to not completing work. I requested after-school tutoring, and as for the other incidents that would come up, I requested a psych eval. But every time I was met by the school with, he's not a good candidate. There were always other students that were failing worse, behaving worse, or something that deemed Abel not a good candidate. So the timeline, I requested psych ed eval when he was in 2nd grade, school year 2014-2015. I was called at the beginning of Abel's 3rd grade by VP at the time, Ms. LaChance, to dissuade me from evaluating him. I agreed to the recommendation to not have my child evaluated because I trusted that she was the expert and she had my and my child's best interest in mind. Once I learned that the VP calling me to dissuade me from moving forward with my assessment request was not only illegal, but also unethical. And given that nothing had changed with Abel at school, I decided to request the evaluation. Again, the VP tried to dissuade me again, but this time I didn't agree. In the following years, after the first request for an assessment, there have been an unraveling of events and not necessarily positive. Fast forward to today, Abel's at Richardson Prep High, 7th grade. Abel came into Richardson with a 504 and a BIP from elementary. However, they were never followed, nor properly implemented. We spent the entire year going back and forth in meetings, and it was never fully finalized. During that same process, I had submitted another psychoeducational evaluation, which by the end of the school year, he was approved for special ed, or special education. But Richardson Prep was ready to remove Abel from the school because he had not met academic expectations last year. But how could he? He was not receiving any support. Today, so now here we are, the school has recently suspended Abel, has given him multiple referrals, has not been very cooperative with me, and what's worse, they're still being punitive, but intensifying their punitive responses against Abel. Again, instead of collaborating, growing, changing, and understanding the community and students that they serve. Just recently, they filed a police report incident, and in another recent incident, a sexual harassment report was made. This is how the school responds to my multiple attempts to seek support for myself and for my son, by becoming aggressive and attempting to intimidate me. I wanted to go down on record tonight that I'm not going anywhere. I've already expressed this to the school and to the assistant superintendents that I've spoken with, teachers. I'm not going anywhere. This is my community, this is my home. I went to school here, I went to King Middle School, I went to Arroyo Valley, San Bernardino Valley College, UCR, and I'm now at Cal State San Bernardino getting my master's. I'm not going anywhere, nor should I. But I'm very close to doing this, quitting my job. I have a great job, okay? I'm really close to quitting my job so that I can personally go to Richardson 5 days out of the week to be physically there. Richardson continues to say they don't have the resources to support students like Abel. Well, maybe if I quit my job and I go volunteer, maybe this will help them. I don't know.
Time.
Meeting after meeting and no results, just punishments. You can't participate here, you can't participate there. So I ask all of you here today, is that what parents in this district have to do to get support for their children? Quit their jobs? Because as far as I know, this district's mission, and I quote, ensure all students develop the knowledge, skills, and proficiencies required for college, career, civic, and economic success. How? By inspiring and engaging them in a system distinguished by, and these are just some, vital partnerships with families, culturally proficient schools, safe, respectful, and welcoming environments, and their logo, making hope happen. Now I have good news and bad news for you board members. The bad news is there's very little hope left both in Abel and I. Very little. When I came to this district and its employees and representatives, which honestly sucks, when it comes to the district and employees and representatives, which honestly sucks, because I know there's a lot of great people here, like Miss Lydia Wandry, Abel's Hillside VP last year at Hillside. But the rest I've yet to meet, and I apologize if I'm offending those good people out there. The good news is that there is a little hope left in me, okay? It's not completely gone. So I now leave it to all of you here today to walk the talk and say, and as you say, make hope happen for Abel and I. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ceballos. Next, the board welcomes Ricardo Casillas from Hardy Brown College Prep.
The reason I'm here today is because I don't know how to start with this situation, but since Hardy Brown is a discriminated school against Latinos, I don't think that's right. You know, I submitted the application before school started. My kid's still not even in school, still not in school. This is the application that was submitted since August the 20th. School started in August the 23rd. And I've been trying to contact them so many times. I even contacted somebody from the district, and so far I'm still seeking resolution. I had even called the police because they refused service on the school. So I want to know if there's some kind of an agenda for this, or somebody that's going to look into this situation, because this is a discrimination now. Just because I'm not African American doesn't give them opportunity. Why should my kids not attend that school? You know, I got her their school grades and everything. She's a good student. So there shouldn't be no questions. And I contact their school, the department. Well, they have somebody in Sacramento, and it seems they got me going back and forth. And I don't think that's unacceptable. You know, I thought that this was back in the 50s. We're not in the 50s no more. And I hope there's somebody that's representing our community, because from my understanding, people out there in the community were telling me, don't go to this, don't try to make an application, because they're going to reject your application. They're going to find any excuse to just give you the runaround. And you know what? I did the effort and did my part. You know, I didn't believe that was going to happen. But honestly, at this point, I could tell 100% there's discrimination. Now, hopefully, there's some kind of transparency or some kind of investigation or some kind of audit, because now they're saying there's no room for my kid. That's the excuse they brought so far today. So what is my next step to do? My kids is going to be still missing school because the lack of leadership, or the persons they're supposedly they're the how do you say the well, I don't know how to explain it, but they're the persons they're supposed to be showing better education for kids. So now, what is my next step to do? Or who do I need to contact? The state or the government, or who?
Mr. Casillas, we'll have someone from our staff reach out to you to help you navigate that particular issue with Hardy Brown. You know, Hardy Brown is a charter school.
Yes, I understand.
And we have a charter schools director who can help you liaison with them. Okay, she's actually right back there. She's got a big smile on her face to your left.
Well,
Okay.
I already talked to her today. And
Okay.
that's the reason I came here, just to address this concern to all of you guys.
Great.
Because I don't want this to be pushed to the side and it just be under the rug, and then everybody's not gonna find out. You know, that's the reason I'm here, facing my face. And if somebody thinks I'm lying, go prove me wrong. You know, tell me if I'm wrong. You know, but I have evidence. You know, everything relies on something that's stamped since the 20th. And, you know, and the school, there's a lack of leadership from Mrs. Allen, or whatever the principal is. She needs to quit or find somebody else to replace her. So far, there's no good leadership at there. And at this point, I don't know what else to tell you. But so I wish I could tell you something else, but like, that's my main concern at this point. And if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Yeah.
You
All
know,
right, we have Dr. Flores, and right after Dr. Flores, Mr. Tillman.
Senor Casillas, what exactly, just to clarify, you presented the enrollment form, right? And why was your daughter, or is it your daughter or your son?
It's my daughter.
Your daughter, why was your daughter rejected?
Well, that's the word I'm seeking, because this application was submitted since the 20th. I visited the school since back in August the 15th, even a week before, because I talked to people from the community members, and they told me, don't take the kid over there. They're only accepting African Americans. I said, no, that's wrong. That's not right. So I went and asked on my behalf. I talked to somebody from the school in there. I think it was a representative or secretary, and she told me, no, we don't do that. You know, everybody's welcome at this school. So I felt confident and I feel comfortable with the school, because they told me a bunch of good stuff about the school, you know, but at this point, that's not what I actually experienced it, you know, and that's the reason I'm raising my voice at this time, because I need somebody to investigate that.
Mr. Tillman?
And I want to just start by thanking you for coming out today and hearing your concerns. This board, every 5 years, we either approve or deny the charter of all the charter schools, and then we evaluate when they come up for renewal again.
Because I even went to the orientation last week.
Have you tried to talk to Margaret Fortune?
No, nobody from high up.
She's in Sacramento. And
nobody from
and
Sacramento. Everybody's on vacation, or everybody's hiding.
I'm not affiliated in any way with Hardy Brown Academy, but Margaret Fortune is the person who's in charge of that school, and she's in Sacramento. So I would suggest that you reach out to her, and you can tell that I asked you to call her. Hopefully she'll talk to you and
this has been going since the 20th.
I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
but that's the person you want to talk to.
Well, I reached out to them since even Friday, to see
Right.
what's going on with my application.
Right,
Because I even did follow I did the orientation on Wednesday,
right,
just to kind of say if that was another excuse.
right.
And I even questioned at that time, there was a assistant principal or vice principal that was giving the rotation. I told him, I said, you know what, there's room for my kid. And she even said, yeah. And I even walked to the classroom inside, and I see there was space available for the 8th grade and 7th grade.
Right.
So therefore, I believe they even have 2 grades together. That's how small the class is.
Right.
You know, but right now, today they told Ms. Ernestina that there was no more room available.
And let me finish by saying, I hear what you're saying, and if I could do anything to help you get into school, I will. We don't have any type of authorization other than when it comes up for renewal. But I will say, too, I would hope that while you're fighting this battle, that you put your daughter in one of our schools, and we can work with you to make sure we get in a school that you think is best for her education. I'm not saying you stop the fight of trying to get into the school you want, but I just would hope that you would talk to our staff and make sure we find a place for your daughter to get her education while you're going through this process.
Well, that was the reason I drove to the office of Mrs. Ernestina, and I had a talk with her, and
Perfect.
I told my concerns, and I also we see some options.
Perfect.
In the meantime, but I still want to
Exactly.
proceed as a complaint.
I understand what
Doesn't
you're
matter,
saying.
I'm not gonna stop
Yes, sir.
because this is unacceptable.
I agree with you.
Especially that we live in a community in a poor neighborhood, and we have to face this discrimination
I hear
against
you.
Hispanics.
Yeah.
You know, we're African Americans and,
I agree with you.
and Hispanics.
And I'm
are
not
the-
saying, and I'm hoping that it's not discrimination, and I know
Well,
they
it
do have Hispanics at the school, but I don't know, but I'm not affiliated with the school formally, so
You
I'm
know,
not,
at this point, I don't care if they sue me for defamation or
Right.
whatever they want to do. I'm
I hear what
willing
you're
to
saying.
step up to the game, because I'm not gonna let this keep happening again to someone else. You know, if it happened to me, okay, maybe I'm helping the rest of the people. You know, because that's what's the word is on the streets.
I hear what you're
that
saying.
they're only accepting African American. And, you know, I don't think that's right. And that needs to be changed. That's an unethical.
that's illegal.
professional.
If that were true, it'd
Well,
be
it's
illegal.
unconstitutional,
Yeah.
from my understanding.
Yes, it is.
Right. All right, thank you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
did you say something? All right, thank you.
Next, the board welcomes Alfredo Aguero.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening.
La razón por la que estoy aquí es para dar seguimiento a los comentarios que vine y hice en agosto 20.
The reason I'm here tonight is to follow up on commentaries I made on August 20th.
Pedí por favor que se me diera una cita, se lo pedí a usted, señora Abigail Medina, al superintendente, a Mr. Marsden.
I asked for an appointment. I asked for you for Ms. Medina and Mr. Marsden.
No he recibido ni una noticia acerca de esto.
I haven't received any news regarding this meeting.
La razón es que estaban quedando las palabras vanas cuando venimos aquí. Estoy sintiendo que venir aquí es inútil.
I feel like at this point, coming here is becoming vain and the words are becoming pointless.
No se nos escucha,
We're not being heard.
no se nos toma en cuenta,
We're not taken into
se
consideration.
nos ignora.
We're ignored.
Pienso que tenemos que empezar a trabajar juntos porque si no esto va a seguir y va a seguir y vamos a estar aquí en cada meeting si es necesario.
I think that we have to begin to work together because this is going to just prolong and we're going to be here every meeting looking for this.
Tenía comentarios, pero los voy a dejar pendientes para cuando venga la presentación de la educación especial.
I had more comments to make, but I'm going to hold those until the presentation is made for the special education.
Pero quiero volver a repetir que necesitamos sentarnos con ustedes para poder empezar a hacer un plan de cómo podemos elaborar eventos de educación especial, porque los que va a elaborar el comité asesor de la comunidad no sirven.
So I really want to sit with you and so we can plan together to collaborate and make meetings for special education, because the ones that the special education committee is doing right now, in reality, they're not good.
Estoy empezando a escuchar otra vez comentarios que padres van y se acercan al Departamento de Educación Especial y no se les está ayudando.
I'm starting to hear comments from other parents who go to the special education department to make concerns known, and they're not being heard.
La razón es porque andan conmigo y me están apoyando.
And the reason is because they're associated with me and they are not being heard.
Las personas son las que están encargadas, como Liaison, las que están encargadas de hacer el enlace entre el Departamento de Educación Especial y los padres.
And these are the people who are in charge of liaisoning between the special education department and the parents.
Eso ya se lo dejé saber a la señora Monarres y sigue lo mismo. Seguimos sin cambiar nada. También a la señora Volkamer, también se lo comenté.
I let Mrs. Monarres know about this and Mr. Volkamer know about this, and everything remains the same.
Venimos y damos la queja de un problema que tenemos con ciertas gentes y lo tenemos que arreglar otra vez con ellos. No puede ser posible.
We come in to address you guys and make our concerns known. Then we have to go ahead and meet with these people again. This can't be possible.
Es como lo que dijo el señor que vino ahorita anterior a mí. Es nomás nos traen a la vuelta y vuelta y no podemos continuar así.
It's just like the gentleman before me. We feel we're giving the runaround and this cannot continue.
Por favor, quisiera saber si me pueden dar una cita. Necesitamos platicar acerca de eso. No podemos continuar en esto así. Si lo tenemos que hacer público, lo vamos a hacer público. Tenemos que hacer lo que tengamos que hacer. Pero esto se puede solucionar de otra manera.
So I ask you please if we can consider having a meeting. If it has to be public, it can be public. But this can't continue this way, and I would like to go ahead and work with you together.
Creo que tenemos la facilidad de palabra y el entendimiento para saber los problemas, cómo solucionarlos.
I think we have the ease of words and understanding to resolve this problem together.
Creo que tenemos que empezar a trabajar y ver qué es lo mejor para los estudiantes, porque sinceramente si hacen un daño a los padres, no es ellos los que lo están sufriendo, los que lo van a sufrir son los hijos.
And I think we have to work together because if there's some kind of issue going on, it's not just affecting the parents. In reality, it's affecting the students. So we have to work together to resolve this.
Muchas gracias y no sé si pueda recibir una cita para poder sentarnos, señora Abigail.
Thank you, and I'm not sure if I can get a meeting and a time where we can meet, Mrs. Evelyn.
Claro, y me gustaría que se juntara conmigo la doctora Flores. Y tenemos que ver de que cuando nos juntemos, que nos juntemos con intenciones para poder mejorar la sistema educativa de educación especial. Y la razón que te lo digo porque uno tiene que trabajar juntos, uno que tiene que ayudar uno al otro. Yo con lo de la programa de Special Ed siempre he abogado y siempre he traído fondos y asegurado que los padres estén involucrados. Inclusive por eso te involucraste con nosotros porque estuvimos escuchando y trayendo programas. And so what I was basically saying is that, you know, the intention for us is to always make sure that we're collaborating and working together, and I would like for Dr. Flores to join me as well if that's with a meeting with Alfredo, but the intention is to work together and making sure that we bring the right programs for the district pertaining to special ed. We have been advocating, we've been providing funding, and we do have the parent organization, which is through CAC, and making sure that we have parent voice, and you've been involved with it in the beginning process. So we have made gains. So I definitely would like to try to meet with you and then with Dr. Flores and if any other board members would like to join.
Esa es la intención y sinceramente siento mucho que se salieron las cosas de camino.
That's the
pero
intention.
No fue por una intención mía, fueron errores que se cometieron con el departamento y el error que hice fue quererlo clarificar y quererlo arreglar y eso fue lo que hizo que yo me fuera la persona mala en esto. Entonces, si tengo que seguirlo haciendo, lo voy a seguir siendo, la verdad.
So that's the intention, and it's unfortunate that the situation is what it is. It was never my intention, and I do apologize for that, but we do have to meet together and try to clarify the situation and work on it together.
Gracias. La señora Blanca quiere dar unas palabras.
Thank
Hola,
you.
mi nombre es Blanca López.
Hello, my name is Blanca Lopez.
Tengo 2 hijos en educación especial.
I have 2
Tienen
children in special
ADHD.
education.
Le pido por favor, si Dios le dio la oportunidad a cada uno de ustedes.
I ask you, please, if God gave all of you the opportunity,
Yo creo que todos ustedes creen en Dios.
I think that maybe all of you believe in God.
Y por favor,
And
si
please,
Dios le dio la oportunidad
if
de
God
estar
gave you
ahí
the opportunity
presente y estar sentado
to
para
be
ayudar a
present
más
here
gente,
and to help more people,
quiero que hagan bien su trabajo.
I want you to do your
Porque
job
sí lo
well,
están haciendo, pero necesitan ver esos
because you are
huecos
doing
que
it
hay
well, but you need to see the gaps
para
that
ayudar a
exist
esos niños de
to
educación
help
especial.
the children of special
Quizás
education.
ustedes, cada uno de ustedes, no pueden entender
Maybe each of you can't fully understand
el tener un hijo en educación
what it
especial.
feels like to have a child in special
Probablemente,
education.
dije.
Maybe, possibly.
Pero el punto es
But my
ayudar a
point
todos
is
esos niños,
to help all of these kids.
no nada más a mi hijo, a
Not
todos
just, not
esos
just my
niños de
kid, but
educación
all of the kids in
especial
special
en
education
diferentes etapas.
at different stages.
¿Saben por qué? Porque son el futuro
Do you know why?
de
Because those children are the future
de este lugar tan hermoso.
of this beautiful
Y
place.
qué mejor que ustedes puedan ser parte
And
de
what
ese
better that you could be
progreso
part of
para
this
esos
progress for these
niños.
kids.
Yo sé que ustedes pueden.
I know that you
Solo
can.
quiero que me den esa oportunidad
I just want
para
you guys
mí
to
y
give
para
me the
todos
opportunity
los niños de educación
for all of the
especial
special
que
education
ayuden,
kids.
por favor, ayuden.
And please help us.
Probablemente ustedes no son, pero son abajo de ustedes
Maybe
las
it's not
personas que
you,
no hacen
but the
bien
people
su
working under
trabajo.
you.
Solo es opción de observar que toda
It's
la
just
gente
an option of
trabaje con
observing
ese amor para
that
poder
the
ayudar a esos niños.
staff
Es lo
working would have
único
the
que
same
pido.
love
Si
for
todos
these
trabajamos en
kids.
conjunto,
If we all work
va a haber
together,
un progreso a mejor.
there's going to be a lot of
Créemelo.
progress for the better.
Eso es todo lo que pido. Muchas gracias
That's all
por
that
su
I
tiempo.
ask. Thank you for your time.
Muchas gracias.
Mrs. Lopez, if you could do us a favor, if you could fill out a blue, you didn't actually have a blue card, if you could fill one out just for our records and make sure that Mrs. Cunningham gets it, that would be helpful to us. If you want us to follow up, make sure your phone number is on the card, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The board next welcomes Devonna Robertson on the subject of CSU fourth year math. Welcome, Mrs. Robertson.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me a few moments before you. I come before you in regards to our trip last Thursday, August 29th. We departed the PDC building with a charter bus full of community members, parents representing DAC, CAC, and DLAC, as well as a few amazing district staff. We had Anna Applegate, we had Dr. Will Greer, and we had the beautiful Miss Suda. And we went down to Long Beach to the CSU trustee board meeting to address, well, all of us went to learn more, but some of us were actually making public comments, addressing our concerns about the inequities of the fourth year math, and now quantitative reasoning is another option. And so initially when I found out that the district was willing to charter a bus and get us there, I was a little leery because I was afraid that pressure was going to be put on us to not say anything or to say a certain thing, and that was not the case. And I'm very proud of the San Bernardino School District who allowed us to go, all different individuals, and have our voices heard without trying to influence us to make any, to sway us in either way. And so I'm just here before you to say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for giving parents the opportunity to get there and voice their concerns and learn more. And I'm also thanking you on behalf of Felicia Jones, who was unable to join me this evening. So thank you.
Thank you. Hold on. We have Mr. Tillman.
Ms. Robinson, so in the end, what's your take on what happened?
Well, so I think that, well, the good thing is that, well, the initial dilemma was a decision was going to be made without the CSU doing their true due diligence to find out if this was going to be an equity issue or issue period, and it is most definitely looking like it will hugely impact our Black and brown students in a negative way. And so because community and parents made a stand, they had to do a little bit more homework. And I know as we stand now, I think they're due to take a vote in November on the issue. But there was a lot of folks throughout the state of California. I would say we were the largest group from San Bernardino represented that day. Not all of us said anything, but those of us who did were heard. Matter of fact, I was heard on I've been told it's been played on the radio, my public comment.
That's great.
So we don't know what will happen, but we now know, they know the pressure's on.
And what was your public comment?
That it is unfair to punish our students for what is often mismanagement and a broken education system.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of giving more hurdles to higher education, they should spend their energy and resources in building more capacity in our K through 12 system. And that was pretty much my 45-second
All right,
comment.
Dr. Flores.
Yes, thank you, Devonna. I'm so glad that you all were unified and went to Long Beach. How many of you went?
We were a charter bus full, so it was 50-something of us, and then a few parents drove up. And a
So
few
more than
community
50?
members. Yes.
More than 50? And you should know that this board has been asked to take a stand and write a letter as well in terms of the fourth year math requirement. And it would be great to hear more parents' positions on it. And, you know, I'm just one board member, but I concur with inequity of requiring a fourth year math requirement when we as a district have not had time to, you know, prepare and even have our students, you know, prepared. Right now, our math scores are in the tank. So we're just barely getting going on doing our due diligence with professional development and getting our, you know, teachers up to date and so forth. So, you know, to me, it's a gatekeeper, another gatekeeper for higher ed. And I stand with you in terms of, you know, saying that it's inequitable at this time.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Flores.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I also wanted to add that it left my mind that quickly, so I guess I'm
Ms.
not adding
Rogers,
anything.
and then you'll think about it. Ms.
You'll
Rogers.
figure it out. You'll figure it out. I do want to say, because, you know, we have 17 things that goes on in one day, but Dr. Hill and I was able to live stream from the locations we were, and we did hear you speak. And I what made me most proud was, as a parent, you know, here from San Bernardino City Unified, the same person that has said that I just can't speak, don't want to speak, did a great job. And again, it just says again, when parents share and voice their concern, you're heard. And so we appreciate you all represented well. We just couldn't be there, but we did follow it on live stream.
Oh, that's awesome to know. Thank you. I was going to say that I think it was real easy to dismiss our concern by saying, not just our concern, but community concern, by saying we want our students to be okay with rigor, and not at any time is it a question about our students' ability, but what is the capacity. And not in just our district, we're talking about the state of California. And even some of the things that were shared that day was alarming, what it would do to some of these communities who do not have the resources.
Right.
And I was given the opportunity to be on a call with one of the CSU trustees along with Suda and Dr. Greer, and she was explaining that if a student would not be penalized for the district not having options available to them to gain that fourth year. But just because we have the option, does that still mean we have capacity? So I can have a fourth year math offered at the school, but if it's 800 students that need to be in that class with one teacher that only teaches 7 times a day, I mean, can that be done realistically, right? And so they said that they would offer an exception or something to that effect, right? But exception doesn't get them at the top of the list neither, right? And so we know hugely, some data was released late last week, and the numbers would impact by far mostly Latino and Black students. And we're just saying, before they make that decision, they should do their homework. So
yeah, thank you so much for the work. And I did also, I was like one of those and watching it live stream, and very proud of everyone there. And that's something that we'll have to pick up as well again. I know we had this conversation before, and this is something that I'll bring to the board again to try to look at that.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Robertson. Those are all our public comments. President Rosales Medina.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move to 8.0, administrative presentation. We have 8.1, special education update. Do you, that would be something maybe we can ask the audience, the public comments?
Mr. Navarro and Mr. Aguayo, you both have comments for 8.1. Would you like to make the comments before or after the presentation?
After the presentation?
Mr. Navarro?
Okay.
The board welcomes Mr. Gil Navarro.
Just want to let you know that Abel, we have your back.
We didn't hear you.
Oh, they didn't. I'm sorry. Abel, we have your back. Good evening, board president, board members. Acting superintendent or interim? Acting.
Just for the evening.
Deputy.
Still the deputy.
Okay. I don't know. My name's Gil Navarro, and the federal regulations has a title for me called non-attorney representative, otherwise known as an advocate. I represent Abel Martinez, in support with the mother, Myra Sabalas. Now, I read the report that you'll be presenting, and the only strong recommendation I'd like to make is, and the problem has been pretty consistent over the years, and it was a good example is your past director of special ed, Mike Dominguez. He was a really nice guy, easy to get along with. He made the district accountable to a lot of compliance issues. But the only problem was not holding his people accountable. That was the only problem. And I think that's why we have this continuation of a lot of special ed complaints, concerns. And so what I'd like to make a strong recommendation in order to make this plan that you're going to present effective is to make the monitoring adhering to the expectations of the teachers as part of their evaluation. Because if you don't, there's no incentive for them to adhere to what you're trying to achieve. And that's been a big problem. And I've experienced this last year and a half. Well, actually, I was advocating for Able even at Hillside. And thank God for the vice principal, Ms. Wandry. I know she's a principal at Bradley. But she was very helpful in trying to make the plan work, and she did. That's because they provided and adhered to the accommodations that were written down. But what's happened now is we have a parent, Myra, that trusts the staff at Richardson Prep. She trusts the administrators at Richardson Prep, specifically the principal. She trusts district management in the school district. And she trusts this Board of Education, the Board of Education members as well. But what's happened, in my opinion, is the Board of Education has violated Myra's trust by not holding the school accountable. That's where we're at. It's about trust. It's about violation. And I can tell you that if you look for a model, if the feds, state of California, are looking for a model of a school that does not want to support a student with disabilities, all you got to do is go down there and audit it. So that's my concern, that nobody's holding the school accountable. And it's been known for years, for some people that I spoke with, that their philosophy is if you don't make it, we don't want you there. And they have this contract that if you adhere to it, they use that as a weapon to kick you out of the school. They tried it at least once or twice, and we were able to stop that. But like Myra says, they're now making it miserable for her, miserable, trying to intimidate her and doing worse things in punishing Able for simple manifestation issues that the behavior intervention plan tells you how to deal with it. So personally myself, I think the feds need to investigate Richardson Prep to prove that we're right. And I know that's where we're going. But what Richardson Prep doesn't realize, that the evidence they're producing by punishing Able is evidence that we'll be able to use against them. It's a no-brainer. It just shows how they discriminate against Able by constantly punishing him. In caps, they put him in a corner from the other kids. They do all kinds of things. And I've advised Myra, and I have no problem doing this, I've done it in the past, this file on those teachers' credentials that do a referral because of a manifestation that should be supported. Just file in their credential. Now, we'll never know by state law what happens, but they have to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Abigail?
And then Mr. Tillman?
Mr. Navarro, you said that I hope she still allows us the chance to do the right thing. I mean, that's what our goal is as board members, and me personally. So, and I take it as a challenge when you say that I haven't done what's proper to make sure that we do the right thing. But I do want to say too, I want to thank you for your years of doing the work that you do, because you've helped countless students in our district, in multiple districts. A lot of times it's adversarial, but in the end, you're looking out for what's best for those students. And I appreciate the work that you've done over the years. And our only goal is to make sure we work with you and to make sure that the parents and the students are treated fairly. So even when you say you're going to bring in the feds, that doesn't bother me. I think it'd be good to have people come in and do oversight and give us an audit and tell us what we're doing wrong and what we can do better. We should be able to do that ourselves, and that's what we talk about, and that's what we try to do. When issues come up in closed session, we can't say out loud when we're talking about students, so no one ever gets to hear the heartfelt conversations that we have concerning making sure that all the issues that we deal with pertaining to kids is equitable and fair and in the best interest of those kids. And that's what's frustrating for us, because we can't say in public, talk about a specific issue with a student. So I'm not going to address that specifically, but I do want to say that I appreciate the work that you've done over the years.
Thank you. What we try to do is work within the system. We don't want to file. So if there's something you can do to evaluate, that would be means that you're taking an interest to the concerns. Thank you very much.
Ms. Dr. Flores.
I also would like to thank you for your advocacy, because, Ms. Ceballo, we are here for our children. All of us here have heartfelt. I mean, we have a lot of work that we do, but the interests that we have are for our children and for our parents. And I think I can speak for all the board like Danny did. We all want to do the right thing. We want to, advocate for our kids and find solutions for them. And we will, and our staff too. We have Dr. Monares, Dr. Perez, who are addressing the issue, Dr. Volkamore. And so we just want you to know that it's on our radar. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And we are definitely, many of us board members do understand the experiences, and some of us even have our own children with the special needs that we constantly advocate for as well. So believe me, we do understand. And like Mr. Tillman mentioned, we have these type of conversations, and we're really passionate about this issue. So thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Board, it's our pleasure to bring you this evening an update on our special education programs. I suppose we'll say better late than never. We were actually scheduled to bring this to you at your last board meeting, and made a choice, given a number of events, that it wouldn't be the best timing in the world. It certainly has gotten its fair share of attention already this evening, and so we're glad that Dr. Menares and Dr. Lundy are here along with their team. I think, Ms. Salam, we should move you to the other side of the aisle, since you're a member of the team
Welcome.
now. Go over there and introduce yourselves to our team. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Menares and Dr. Lundy.
Well, thank you. Good evening, President Rosales Medina. Good evening, Vice President Rogers. She stepped out. Board, Dr. Volkamer, Cabinet and Community. Thank you for all those who are wearing blue. We're in solidarity as a team, really trying to improve the systems for our children who have special needs. We're honored tonight to share the work that's been taking place since last school year. It actually started in spring of 2018, so it's been some time. And we want to really share with you the work that we're doing to create and provide a continuum of supports and services for all our students through our special education advisory team. We also want to thank the board for your continued support with the work that we're doing for supporting the reorganization and all the changes that have been taken place in the last school year. Next slide. So tonight we have two primary Outcomes Board, we want to provide an update on the Special Education Department Strategic Plan development, and we want to share next steps for systems refinement and improved educational outcomes for scholars with special needs. And just from some of the public comment tonight, you can see that this is very timely and very needed in our district, and we are committed to this work. Next slide. So I want to give some context to the work that's been going on in special education. And this starts back quite a few years ago. In March of 2015, the state of California convened a special education task force. And that task force job was to take a look at what are the best practices to provide services for our students with special needs. And this report was developed, One System, Reforming Education to Serve All Students. And the report really outlines this idea of eliminating a bifurcation between the learning experiences of general education and special education students. The quote that we pulled out from the report describes it as a seamless system. So in the past, and not just in San Bernardino, but unfortunately throughout the state, we've gone about educating our special needs students in two different programs, if you will. We had our special education programs and we had our general education programs. But the purpose of the federal and state statutes is to have one program for children to be successful with the special ed services added to it so that they can access the grade level content and be successful. And so the work of the task force at the state level is very much now mirroring or has put together a vision of what the state is saying should happen, and now San Bernardino is taking that work on. And so the report paints a future vision of how general education and special education should complement and work together in what they call this seamless system. And the One System is designed to provide prevention and early intervention, which is, I think, what we heard a lot from Ms. Ceballos in terms of she was looking for prevention and early intervention for her son to be most successful. That's what we're working towards in our district. As you know, Board, our SELPA is one of the largest SELPAs in the state. And because the state is pushing this work, we are very much behind it because we know it's in the best interest of our children. And so throughout this presentation, you're going to hear reference to a seamless system. And when we say seamless system, what we're saying is students who are special education students are general education students first. All of the services and supports that a general education child receives, all those programs, a special education child receives that too, as well as the services so that they can access it. So we want to start painting this picture for our community, for our case carriers, for our principals, that special education children are general education children first, and the special ed services are so that they can be most successful in what we call the least restrictive environment, which means in the general education setting with their peers. The other piece of this seamless system is that special education is not a location. And I'll share a little bit more about that. Too often, we tend to think that a child who has special needs needs to go somewhere else, to somebody else. And when we're trying to create a system that is seamless, you're not going to somebody else. Everybody has the tools to be able to support you to be most successful. That is definitely a cultural shift, and that's going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But those are two big pieces that come out of this report and what we're working to put in place for our district so that all of our students are successful and demonstrating their brilliance in many different ways. Next slide. So before I get into the actual the strategic plan, I want to share some of the things that what we know are some immediate needs, what I like to call low-hanging fruit, and what we're doing about that, Board. So the first thing that we know is that the special education department needs to strengthen the compliance monitoring systems, ensuring that school-level IEP team meetings consistently implement quality and legally defensible IEPs. So what are we doing about that? The special education department is currently developing a standards of practice handbook to include a site leader quick start guide outlining how to lead and monitor a quality and legally defensible IET meeting. Training is scheduled and monitoring will be ongoing. Let me talk a little bit more about that because this is a really important piece in our work right now. When we think about a quality and legally defensible IEP, we're really talking about making sure that our timelines, our protocols, needed interpretations at IEPs, if that's what we know that our families need, is ready to go so that our parents can meaningfully participate in the IEP meetings. And we're really talking about providing the highest level of customer service to our families during that IEP team meeting. There's nothing more special than to be sitting around a table with a group of adults talking about what the need is of that particular child and everyone coming together and partnering on that. And so our goal is that all of our IEP team meetings function in that manner. The way that we believe we can make that happen is first with the Standards of Practice Handbook, which is being designed for our case carriers. So when I say case carriers, that's our classroom teachers, our psychologists, our SLPs, all the different adults that interact with our children, because we have lots in special education. But we've had a handbook for our staff, and it hasn't been easily accessible. It's not user-friendly. So we're revising it, we're refining it, we're making it better, and we're putting it into a digital platform that our case carriers can then easily access. We've already been sharing some of this with SBTA, and they're very excited to see what this is going to look like. When it's all done, then we will be training the case carriers on how to use that so that they are empowered and have everything that they need in front of them to produce the best IEP possible. And this is all around compliance at this point. We're not even talking about getting into the content yet, right? We're just talking about the compliance piece. In addition, this quick start guide. So we have veteran principals at our schools and we have new principals at our schools. And in our secondary schools, many times it's our vice principals that are serving as what is called the LEA designee, right? So we don't attend all the IEPs. That's not the way it's ever designed to be done. We're supposed to have the LEA designee, which is our principal or our vice principal, serve as the person who is signing off on the IEP, saying that it's legally defensible and that it's of quality. Well, we have to make sure that those who are signing off have the tools that they need in order to be able to do that. So picture that this quick start guide is going to be organized in a manner by which a principal or an assistant principal can quickly grab it, and it's sequenced to follow the way the IEP should flow. So what should you do before the IEP? That'll include, do we need interpreters there? Let's make sure we've got our interpreters there. Who needs to attend? Are we meeting our timelines? Are the present progress monitoring tools in place? All of those elements that a principal, a very busy principal, needs to be able to have at their fingertips. We see it as like a trifold, something they can quickly take to IEPs and they can use. So that's for our admin, so that they have the tools so they can be most successful. On the special ed department side, then their job is to monitor to make sure that these tools are being used, monitor to make sure IEP timelines are being met, and then when there's schools that we're seeing that there are some higher needs, then we're swooping in and we're taking care of that and making sure that we're meeting those needs quickly rather than waiting for them to come to us at a board meeting. So that's a lot of what we're looking at. An additional piece that Dr. Lundy has already started, and she started this last school year, is she quickly reorganized how our program specialists work with our schools. I'm going to use your term that she uses, that they were going out putting out fires and they didn't have extinguishing hoses to take care of that. So she reworked it. And so now they are assigned to particular schools, and this is specifically at our elementary. So now our elementary principals know who their point of contact is. They contact that individual when they have questions, and now the schools are getting much more intimate customer service. That's starting to help with some of these compliance pieces. On the secondary level, we just hired a new coordinator. If you might remember a couple of board meetings ago, she came from our district. She was a secondary case carrier at Curtis, and so she's going to be working with the department chairs to also help build their capacity to be point of contacts at that school, as well as our two program specialists. So we've already reworked a lot of this to start to address some of these compliance pieces, and we're happy to say, we think, that we may be exiting compliance issues with the state. We've sent them everything they need right now, and we're waiting to hear back from them, but we believe that every time we send them what they need, comes back with just a little less, and we're happy to see that, and so we think we're almost done. The state itself is also reorganizing, so they're in a place of fluctuation as well, so we're waiting to hear, but we think that we are moving in the right direction on that, at least on the state side. So what I want you to hear on this is high customer service during our IEP team meetings and giving those supports to our schools so that they can provide the best service possible for our families, because that's where the children are at. Children are not at the district level, right? So that's what we're working towards. Next slide. What else do we know? Okay, so we know that in the past, special ed has operated in isolation, and this has further created a bifurcation of general education and special education. And so what are we doing about that? We are now, and it started last year, kind of mid-year, but very much an intentional shift toward an interdependent model of operation and collaboration with other district departments. So let me explain a little bit more about that. When Dr. Lundy took over, it was very clear that for whatever the reasons are, and it doesn't matter, it's just where we were, special ed was handling everything related to special ed. They were handling hiring, they were handling transportation, they were handling fiscal, they were doing so much of the business side of the work that too much time was not being given. Too much time there and less time around program. So now, because of the way the department has been reorganized, we are now collaborating with our other departments so that we're not functioning in an isolated manner, and ultimately then our educators won't feel like they're isolated from their peers, and then our students won't feel isolated from their peers. So this looks like, for example, collaborating with ed services around professional development so that our special ed educators are part of that learning rather than feeling like, where do I fit in this work? That we're collaborating with student and wellness and support services, because there's a lot of need around understanding how to support children with behaviors. And the Swiss department is one that is an expert in that, and so we're working with them. But in turn, they learn about how to make accommodations for students who don't access everything right away. We're collaborating with child development. We've already opened a few years ago some inclusion programs for our youngest children, and we're continuing to do that. And what we're seeing as a result is then students get what they need at a very young age, and then they exit out of special ed and they enter our gen ed setting with no necessary supports, and they're being very successful. So we want to see more of that. We're also collaborating with Personnel Commission and Human Resources. Dr. Lundy and her team have done a great job hiring instructional aides, paraprofessionals. For years, we've had those vacancies. For years, we're slowing that tide and starting to get those filled, and that's only because there's been collaboration and communication. And so an example of what this looks like right at a classroom level or at a level for the student, just this year, and I think it started this summer, the Valley work? Yeah, this summer, we had students who, in our transition program, so these are students who are in our high school and up to 22 years old, collaborating with ed services and the workforce development program, and so they did some training, and they're taking classes at Valley College. And so they are participating in things that our gen ed kids are doing, which that hadn't been happening in the past. So that's some examples of trying to close that bifurcation and increase the interdependent model. And a few more of what we're doing. So this one, we're not pleased with where we're at, and we're very much intent on changing this. There's a disproportionate number of African American students and English learners who have been identified for special education services over time. A couple slides from now, I'll tell you exactly what that data shows. So we have been collaborating with ETSA, specifically around the African American Improvement Plan, to start to change this. And our English Learners Department, we're starting to have conversations around the Multilingual Initiative, so that we are incorporating differentiated accommodations for these two student groups prior to assessment. This is what's important to understand, Board. Once a child gets identified for special education services, it's not as easy to get them out of those services. In order to change the disproportionality of of African American or English learners, we have to do it prior. It has to be when we first start seeing them struggling, and then we meet those needs. So it's outside of the special ed setting, and that's why it's so important to be collaborating with ETSA and with the English Learner Program. Because what we can do is we can bring our expertise around accommodations. What we can do is bring our expertise around different ways that children learn and different ways that children demonstrate their brilliance. And then Ed Services can build that into their understanding, their knowledge base, and build that advocacy across the district. Next slide.
Mr. Tillman, you had a question?
No, I just think that that area is critical. You know, you mentioned that the challenge is you can't get them out easily. And the only reason why you want to get them out is because you think there's things you can do for them if they weren't identified. That shouldn't be the case. It should never be the case that once a kid is identified, because they're identified, you can't do something good for them or different or make a change that is obvious, right? And I'm dealing with that right now. I have a nephew that came to live with me, and I met with the teachers, and there's things you can't do until you have the IEP meeting, even if it's obvious to the counselor. So that part is the part that's challenging and frustrating because you are in a race against the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So so you register my student in these classes, but you know the student would probably be better off in different classes, but you tell me at the time, I have to register him in his classes because this is what his last IEP from this other school district said, and that's the law. That is frustrating because there's no way to suggest that switching a student's classes in the middle of a quarter or a semester is a good thing, right?
Right.
So the sooner you do it, the better. But there's nothing built into it to allow it to happen.
Right, so it's that balance between making sure there's enough assessments, interventions, and if nothing's working, then we assess for special ed if they need it. Because we're never going to say we don't want children to get the services that they need on an IEP. Absolutely never. That's not appropriate. What we're advocating for is, are there services, are there interventions that we can do much earlier on outside of special education, and the child will be successful? Because if so, that's what we need to be doing.
Right. And then just this is statewide, but you know, in the meeting I had with my nephew, this district he came from, they had him take the same math class twice. And the counselor was telling me they weren't going to give him credit at his new school because it was the same class. But he didn't pick the class.
Right.
They told him at that district to take those same math classes. And now the sad thing to me and the scary part was the counselor wasn't surprised. She said, this happens. And in our district, we're not going to give you credit, so you have to take a different class in order to get credit for the class that you should have gotten credit for when they had you take that class. But it brings up the issue with this requiring an additional math class. Because if you have people throughout the state who give kids the same math class because they don't have other math classes to give students that are quote-unquote special ed, that's crazy to me. And it shouldn't even be legal. How can you tell a kid who got an A in a class, the math class, because I don't have a higher math class for a special ed student, you're going to take the math class again? And then to have the state saying they want to add another class for people to take. Why would you do that? You don't have enough classes within your K-12 system right now to accommodate all the students and allow them to progress. I mean, you don't have the laws to force that to happen. And that happened because of, they telling me, that this is normal for students that are special ed throughout school districts throughout the state. But that's a terrible thing. And I hope we're not doing that here. I hope there's never a time where we're going to make a kid take the same class over again because we don't have a math class or English class that is the next level to allow them to grow.
Dr. Lundy just told me we're working on that to make sure that that's not happening. To make sure, let me make sure I'm clear that what I'm saying.
Dr. Flores?
Just following up with what Mr. Tillman said, I'm concerned that our teachers will have, students that are English learners, special ed, and 504s. And especially our middle school and our high schools, do they actually know what to do? I mean, they have a lot of extra work and they have to do accommodations. And I know you're not done with your presentation yet, but I mean, in terms of the strategies that teachers need to be cognizant of, are they professionally trained? I mean, in terms of how to support the kids, that's really, really key. And it's not fair that a teacher has, 5 or 6 kids with all of these accommodations, plus, high school, 40 kids or 36 kids. And so it's a big task. And every child, every student needs to, be given those accommodations. And so I'm wondering, I don't want you to answer right now, but I hope we have a system in place, or how teachers become aware of it, and if they don't know how to handle it, that they're given the proper support, because it's a tremendous task. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment.
And we do have a long presentation, so if you could move along, because this is, and we'll have additional time for questions later on in the presentation.
And it's actually a nice transition to the next one, because what we are not looking to overburden our teachers so that they don't feel successful. That doesn't serve our children by any means, right? So another piece that we're doing, we know that we have quite a few new special education educators. That it's just an area that every district is looking at all the time. We're always hiring. And so we needed to have an onboarding program for them to build the capacity. So in the nature of collaboration, we are now collaborating with employee development, where we have some intentional onboarding for our special education interns and probationary educators. And it's a 2-year onboarding like everybody else, but that had not happened in the past, board. There was not intentional onboarding for our new special education educators, and now there is. So they get support on accommodations in the classroom. How do you do those IEPs? How do you write them? How do you make sure that they're legally defensible? How do you use SACE? All those things that are very specific to our district. We're doing that now with employee development. So we're very thankful for the support throughout the district to really shift the work in special education. Next slide. And then finally, we know that authentic and intentional engagement with families of special needs scholars needed to be improved. And so we've increased collaboration and engagement with our community, our CAC, our Community Advisory Council, to offer workshops and support groups for our parents. So board, you have a packet. It looks like this. And in the last couple of pages, it starts on page 4, are the handouts, the workshops that have been going on for CAC. The workshops are a combination of legal requirements of CAC, but they're also workshops where our parents have asked to have what they're calling support groups, or just ways to bring the parents together to really talk through the various disabilities and where do they get resources. And there's just so much out there, and so these this work has been instrumental. I want to really commend our CAC, Ms. Gutierrez, our new Assistant Director of Special Education, Dr. Lundy. We started with 39 official members on the CAC, and we're now up to 60, and we're going to keep growing on that. I also want to note that in all the changes in special education, the team really worked to find a space for our CAC to come together. So they've reworked a space in the WA, and so we now have a room that our CAC helped decorate, and that we hold meetings there, and it was pretty full this last time. And I know we've got some of our CAC members in the audience, and so if you can stand, our CAC president, Liliana Valenzuela, I saw her come in with her 2 beautiful boys. Our vice president, Erica Delgada de Ramos, I think I saw her. And I don't know if our secretary is here, Esperanza Lomali, but these ladies, thank you so much for your leadership. It has not been easy. The CAC was kind of dormant for a while, and it's not dormant anymore. And we're still working through a lot. Our bylaws, we will be bringing those forward on September 10th for a vote. And we're hoping that that will be done, and if not, we will continue, but a vote will be offered on September 10th. And I just want to commend these ladies for persevering and really focusing. So now let's take a look at who our special education children are, and then we'll get into the advisory. All right, so as a district, and we're using numbers board as of June 2019. The reason we're doing that is those are official numbers that we report to the state through case miss, and so we wanted to go with some official numbers. So there's slight changes, but it's not huge. So approximately 13% of our SBCUSD scholars are identified as special needs children. We are a SELPA board, which means we serve children birth to 22 years. And so in our SELPA, as in June, we had 6,791 scholars, and in our K-12 classrooms, we had 6,388. And we fluctuate back and forth, but we tend to be about 13% as a district. Next slide. I had shared that there was some disproportionality, and here's some data around that. So of those 6,000 or so students, as a district, we have 26.1% of our total district enrollment that is our English learners. In our special education program, it's 26.5. So it's just about on par. However, what we also know, and Dr. Flores had mentioned this before, is this idea of what is the best way to educate children who have an identified disability as well as who are learning English as a second language. What's the best practice on that? And we've been in conversation with GAVE, and there actually is not necessarily a model out there. So we're going to work one with them. And so through our multilingual initiative, we'll be working with our English learner department, and we might as well be the SELPA that figures this out. So we're looking forward to that so that we don't become disproportionate for our English learners. Next slide. Our African American youth, again, as of June 2019, as a district, our total African American population was 10.17, and you can see that for our special needs students, we're 18% of our special needs are African American. So here's where we can see a clear over-identification of our African American youth. And so we've got a few things that we need to be working on. We need to be mitigating those implicit biases, and we're doing that in collaboration with ETSA and our African American Improvement Plan. We as a department need to be reviewing and monitoring our identification protocols and collaborating with Ed Services in this area, again focusing on prevention and early intervention. So that if the child needs the special education services and they qualify, we provide that. But if it's maybe behavior pieces, we help put those services in place outside of an IEP, and the child can be just as successful. So working with our ETSA program is important. And then finally, board, you approved a contract a few months ago with the University of Laverne, and we have started partnering with them with their Institute for Neurodiversity Learning and Wellness. Some of our board members actually met Dr. Elliott at the African American Parent Summit. We actually invite you to come and hear her. She'll be working with our site leaders next Wednesday, 9:30 to 11:30 at the PDC. That's her first big go out with them. But the work around neurodiversity, learning and wellness is really looking at how to engage the physiology of the body so that you can be in a state to have optimal learning experiences, starting with the adults and then for the child, as well as to work on implicit biases. So it's not going to be something where we could wave our magic wand and change things, but if it could, we would have already done it. But it is something that we are looking forward to, and we have received very positive feedback on Dr. Elliott and the work that she brings around neurobiology. So it's cutting edge, and we believe it's going to make a difference for our scholars. About 9:30, 10 o'clock would be the latest, okay? 12 o'clock at the latest, okay? All right, moving on with who our children are. Last year, we evaluated 1,021 scholars, and of those students, 979 qualified, 42 did not. Just real quick on qualification board, basically it comes down to if it's a specific learning disability, there is a discrepancy between what the IQ says a child can do and what they're actually producing. If there's enough discrepancy, then that child could be identified for a specific learning disability. There's a lot more to it than that, but it's around discrepancies that identify for specific learning disabilities. And so the more we have strong first instruction that are meeting the needs of lots of different learners, you'll see a smaller discrepancy gap. And so that's what we talk about when we say prevention and early intervention. And that was a quick down and dirty, but this was not about identification. But just to give you kind of an idea. Of the students that, so we had 1,021 scholars enter, we had 820 exit. And your question may be, well, how did they exit? A variety of ways. Graduation is one of them. Many times children who are on speech only, they are special education students, but it's very much therapy based. We get the therapy they need and then they can exit, and they tend to exit. And then we do exit students off of RSP settings as needed. So there's different ways that a child can exit, but last year we exited 820 of our scholars back into the gen ed setting. Next slide. Oh, I think I missed something here. No, I'm good. No, I do want to share. I'm sorry. And so one more thing, we tend to, Ms. Rogers asked me to take a look into when are we identifying children, and 80% of our children are being identified in the elementary setting. So it's our goal that makes sense. That's where you want to identify them. Look at prevention, early intervention, put that in place. Our goal is always to get them the services they need as early as possible, after we've exhausted other pieces. So about 80%. Most of it's during the elementary setting. And I can get you more data, more specific if you'd like. Next slide. All right, so we've talked about this seamless integration, right? One system. And we believe that this can happen because we know where most of our children are at. And so they spend most of their day in this pie chart of different settings, right? The red that you can see board, those are children who are in a special day class and they are mild to moderate. That's 12% of our total special education group. You can see that the gray are also special day classrooms. And so when there's special day, that means there's only special education children in that classroom. That's really important to understand. So 12% of our moderate to severe are in SDC. You could see a small sliver of students who are in special day emotionally disturbed, and a small sliver who are in our non-public settings. But that big purple is the group that we know can make a difference. And so 16% of them are in, that's like a little Pac-Man, right? 16% of them are in speech. No, click. So that's 16%, right? That counts as special ed, and the other 58%. That means that 74% of our students spend the majority of their learning time in the general education classroom with their general education peers. So Dr. Flores, the teachers are already doing it. We just want to build their capacity even further, and we want to increase the collaboration between our special education and our general education educators, because the children are already there. And the more that, as a classroom teacher, you understand how to meet the varying needs of all the different types of learners in your classroom, then you feel very proud of your own profession, right? And you feel like you can do it. And they're not doing it alone, they're doing it with their special education peers. So 74% of our children can access that idea of a seamless one system. And that's what we're working towards. And so the strategic plan is focusing on those educators and those children to start. We're not ending there, but we're starting there because that's where the majority of our children spend their day. So I'm almost done, and I'm going to try to give you a little visual, the best that we can, about what we mean about a continuum of supports and services, okay? So I want you to picture this line right there, that is the journey of a child. They can enter our schools and they could be in all kinds of different places, right? I'm going to tell you two stories. First one, this is Marissa. So Marissa started in San Bernardino City Unified, and she was evaluated for speech-only services. I want you to note where she's at. She's in the general education classroom. See that? The services worked on articulation as she was dropping ending sounds, Additionally, she had some challenges with expressive language. When she would speak as a 4-year-old, her family did not understand her because she would drop these ending sounds, so she was just hard to understand. So she was enrolled in our school, she was evaluated for speech and language services, and she was part of the general education classroom. After successful intervention and therapy, she exited speech, but she continued in RSP because she had an auditory processing delay, which would be specific learning disability, in the area of written language. However, she was always in the general education classroom, and she continued to excel with the disability because she had assistive technology and other accommodations provided in partnership with the RSP teacher and the general education teacher. So Marissa has spent her time in the general education classroom with the services and supports to support her, but her location has always been with her peers. Okay? We have another student. I don't know if mom's here. There she is. This is Ethan Cooper. Ethan is a 19-year-old student. Is Ethan here tonight? Oh, Ethan, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Will you stand up? We're really proud of you. So this is Ethan's story. So he's a 19-year-old. He graduated 2018 from San Bernardino High School. Go Cardinals. He is currently participating in our workability program and taking courses at San Bernardino Valley College, so I mentioned that before. According to Ethan's mom, Miss Cooper, a medical doctor told her that Ethan would not amount to anything when he was 2 years old because he had speech delays and other challenges, but we can see that was not the case. Ethan had speech until he was 5 years old, and then he exited. He wasn't in our schools at this time. When he was in 4th grade, he was identified with a specific learning disability. Again, he wasn't in our schools at this time. Mom's quite the advocate. I think you all know that about Miss Cooper. He did enroll in San Bernardino City Unified as a freshman, and through the various programs and tremendous support in SBCUSD and San Bernardino High School, he found a love of learning. Ethan's brilliance includes the ability to play different instruments, and he was part of the SBHS Mariachi. As a sophomore, through encouragement from his peers, he joined drama, supporting behind the scenes in performances. He didn't want to be up in front, but he liked being part of the group and behind the scenes. His mom shared that the electives and extracurricular activities helped Ethan to flourish and come out of his shell. Ethan was enrolled in A through G courses and performed best in classes like English, science, and history, where there was some applied learning occurring. In the future, Ethan aspires to be a video programmer. Last summer, Ethan worked in our print shop, learning the other side of programming and developing his sense of responsibility and accountability. Now, you're probably going to get some chills on this one because mom shared this. Ethan shared with his mom that he is part of the E students, not those that are on the A honor roll, but students who are going to stay in the community and work in the community, so schools should recognize them too. And so when we think about a continuum of supports and services, here's the image that we're thinking about. Students come to our school and they're all part of the general education classroom. Then over time, they may be identified to receive accelerated learning and placed in advanced programs. They may also be identified to need additional supports and interventions before they are considered for an evaluation. The system that catches, and so that's what we call prevention and early intervention. The system that catches and identifies a student who may need additional intervention supports is through a multi-tiered system of supports that we're also working on in the district under my division. Wasn't part of this presentation tonight, but it's a huge piece of this work. And the supports develops processes and structures for the educators to use various forms of data, looking at student work, student focus groups, and other inputs to determine what the student needs and to adjust instruction to meet those needs. Students with special needs are included across the continuum. And as a district, we actually have 31 scholars, Miss Medina, who are identified as twice exceptional. That means they are GATE and they are special education, because we know children don't fit into a little box.
Right, thank you for mentioning that.
Absolutely. And so Continuous supports, meaning our special ed scholars should be and will be throughout our programs in every setting, because we know that they have that brilliance. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lundy now, and she's going to talk about the strategic plan. But the strategic plan was developed with these core principles in mind: seamless programs for children, meeting the needs in the most unrestrictive environment with their gen ed peers, and prevention and early intervention, so we're not waiting for children to fail, and so that parents aren't frustrated. We know we have a lot of work to do. We are committed to doing this work. So, Dr. Lundy, your turn.
Good afternoon, or good evening, board. I'm Dr. Lundy, the new Director of Special Education, and I'm delighted to be able to come on board as a participant initially with the strategic plan development, as a principal really interested in the needs of our special education learners, and transitioning to the director. So if I could draw your attention to the handout, it just kind of refreshes our mind to the work that was done previously and what our initiatives were and what the recommendations that came out of the initial work from West Ed. So now we come to the work of the advisory. The previous essential understanding and current enrollment data were included in the advisory work. The board may remember that spring 2018, you received an update on the recommendations made by West Ed to refine our existing programs and services in special education, and that refers to this handout that I mentioned a little earlier. The recommendations in this report included a targeted and focused approach on developing and implementing an MTSS framework, and the remainder of this presentation, we will update the board on the work that has taken place to map the recommendations received. The board will hear from various groups and voices heard, and how the department is working to a model of inclusivity and a process for implementation. So So the Special Education Advisory, we had our first inaugural meeting on January the 21st, and I believe we had a record number of participants with over 200 people showed up. So there was an all call for all community members. We had parents represented, we had community members, we had teachers, speech pathologists, psychologists of our special ed department, maintenance and operation. We had various people who came together who had some way touched the lives of our special education students. And in order to develop the strategic plans, groups were brought together over a course of 3 minutes in 3 meetings in large group to kind of bring together the data and figure out what are the issues and how are we going to address the things that we set out to do in the beginning. Through this process, we had a series of larger meetings where we included large groups, and then we had smaller meetings in between to then sift through the work and make sure that we're getting down to the key items, and that's where some of our advisory members are behind me, the key workings from those larger meetings to make sure that we're being intentional and intensive about the work that we're doing. So the purpose of the advisory group was to work collaboratively with the key stakeholders to gather data around the 4 recommendations set forth. And in summary, provided the work in collaboration with West Ed. And in order to connect the work to the direct needs of the individuals they impacted, we engaged, as I mentioned, a variety of participants. After conducting our first large group advisory, we completed an after-action review with the parents. And with that, with Mr. Aguero as well, they appreciated being invited and being able to participate, but sometimes the level of conversation and the depth of knowledge could be a little intimidating. And they advised us that we should really work with a smaller group of parents. So to remedy that, we actually instituted small study groups with the parents where we would front load them the information prior to the meeting and help them to formulate questions, as well as pre-develop things that they wanted to express so that they would have confidence and be able to have a distinct voice in those largest meetings. Next slide. So in moving forward, we know that we have been doing a lot of talking, and we've talked about a lot of things that we want to do. So as I begin to bring up my colleagues who participated in the advisory group, I want to hone in and ask the board to listen as they're talking, specifically when they go into the core tenets of the plan, to look at the increased frequency and intensity of a collaboration with other SBCUSD departments to eliminate the bifurcation. I also want to see if you hear in our plan our intent to increase and improve training and monitoring of state and federal statutes. And finally, through the presentation from our advisory members, if I want you to listen for the alignment of special education program services with SBCUSD mission, vision, and community engagement plan. Because once again, we do not want to operate in isolation of the wonderful things that are already occurring within our district. So first, as I mentioned, I would like to invite some of our team members who worked on recommendation number 1, turnaround leadership.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Willis, and I am the DIS service provider for elementary special education, and we're going to talk about recommendation number 1. The goal of this is to create responsibility for students on all campuses while educating administrators on all needs and assisting in understanding the legal guidelines. So within this goal, the advisory team identified 7 action steps for the special education department. The first action step is to create a user-friendly interactive guide designed for administrators and leaders. To guide all site leaders on how to become instructional leaders in the area of special education. And Dr. Menara spoke on this earlier, we're calling this the Site Leader Quick Start Guide. This document will include an overview of federal guidelines, program descriptions, the alignment of general and special education, and the establishment of guidelines for best practices. Action step number 2 is to create a principal administrator help desk. This will help provide guidance to principals for immediate and urgent questions.
Action step number 3 promotes increased access and participation of all students across the educational setting. The special education department will work with site leaders to allow special considerations for special education in master scheduling of electives, pathways, and enrichment programs. Additionally, action step number 4 recommends that site leaders will support the inclusion of special education students when scheduling pathways through interdepartmental meetings to provide training to the counselors on their role in guiding students with special needs.
Good evening, Board. My name is Rosa Hernandez. I'm an RSP demonstration teacher at Cole Elementary School. And action step number 5 is related to curriculum. The advisory recommends that the special ed department collaborate with ed services to ensure that our adopted curriculum includes sufficient materials, consistent implementation and intervention, as well as supplemental components so that all of our learners have access to standards-based curriculum. In action step number 6, the advisory recommends that the special education department continue to restructure the location of those special day classes so that all schools have a continuum of RSP to SDC programs. Also, restructuring will allow families to keep siblings with children with special needs at their home schools, at their neighboring schools. Programs that service our more severe learners are going to be regionalized over time. And action step number 7 encourages our special education department to establish vertical articulation across the elementary, middle, and high school levels, as well as sites regarding specialized programs. This will establish the communication that as students transition from one school to another and their services continue to the next grade level in accordance to their individualized education plan.
Thank you. And now I'm going to invite the advisory members who worked on recommendation 2, which is to engage in proactive learning processes to generate a longer-term staffing plan that will result in successful recruitment, development, and retention of teachers and leaders whose competencies are aligned to the specific needs of all SBCUSD students and families.
Okay, before you start, Mr. Gallo had a question.
Yeah, can we get a copy of those specific action steps in here? I'm not sure they're aligned specifically with the handout that you gave us.
So there,
at least I'm not following it that way.
Right. So we can get the actual speech, and then maybe what would help better is to map exactly what they said to here, because it's all in here.
Yeah,
it's
I see.
Just done a little
It's
bit
kind of And are there like
for you.
accountability elements of this and timelines and things like that?
We can do that, Mr.
Okay.
Gallo.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Good evening. So the advisory recognized the need to expand SBCUSD efforts and options in recruiting and retaining highly qualified special education staff and personnel. First, the advisory wants to thank the board, thank all of you, for working with SBTA to develop a contract that included class size reduction. With the class size reduction, that allowed us to be better aligned with our neighboring school districts in terms of our special education classrooms. So thank you all for that. As a result, we actually opened up 23 additional SDC classes throughout the district. When school started this year, we were able to hire 91% of the necessary credentialed teachers. Human Resources and the Personnel Commission continues to actively recruit the necessary staff, including paraprofessionals, to adequately support these new classrooms. One more thing to point out that I failed to mention. There's a shortage throughout the state. There's historically a shortage of speech and language pathologists working in the school setting. For San Bernardino City Unified School District, this year that is not the case. We were able to open the school year fully staffed in the area of speech and language pathology.
Good evening. My name is Hilda Tobar, and I'm a LH Resources Specialist at Arroyo Valley High School. And we also have to say that the advisory also commends the board on the stipends offered to deaf and hard of hearing teachers, making SBCUSD a destination district for hard-to-fill positions in our district. And also the advisory recognized the important role paraprofessionals play in supporting students with additional needs. Therefore, expanding onboarding to include our paraprofessionals is a future next step for the special education department.
Thank you. So we'll have representatives from recommendation 3, instructional transformation.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Holm. I'm a moderate severe special ed teacher over at San Bernardino High School, and I'm a demonstration teacher in the district. The third target area was instructional transformation and really building capacity among our teachers. The advisory recognized the need to provide professional learning opportunities to support both general and special education faculty and staff in inclusive practices for diverse learners. The advisory sees the importance of expanding opportunities for all students, including those with special needs, to have access to the great programs SBCUSD offers. The advisory believes that building the capacity of all educators, general education, and special education through professional learning opportunities is the path to achieve instructional transformation. In addition, the special education department will collaborate with educational services to offer a training for general education teachers on how to make content accessible for all learners, including a baseline understanding of special needs students. From there, professional learning opportunities will be determined based on input from classroom educators. Additionally, the advisory recommends that the special education department work with site and district teams to augment professional learning plans to include a space for collaboration and cross-training between special education and other departments. These strategies will lead to a more inclusive learning environment for all students in San Bernardino City Unified School District.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, Dr. Flores.
Can you come back? So when are you rolling out all of this? Is there a plan in place to begin the PD, to target the needs of the teachers? Have you taken a survey?
That is the first step. The first step that the advisory saw a need for is to do a needs survey to find out really what is it that our teachers, what information do they need, but also we want to start with a baseline. So what is something that, what do all of our educators, special ed and general education, what do they need to know as a baseline? I'm not sure what the timeline is for that, but I know we wanted to move on that this school year.
Because, you know, it's nice to have plans, but if you don't implement them, and we don't meet the needs of our kids and our teachers, then it just stays there, sitting, you know, wherever it is. And our kids do need very concrete, you know, pedagogy as well as strategies, and our teachers need their capacity built like yesterday, and right?
Absolutely.
And I am assuming that you're targeting kids at all different levels and also different grade levels, high school teachers, middle school teachers, correct?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that we really emphasized is that we have amazing programs in this district, but we want all of the students to be able to access all of those programs, not programs that are just for the high achieving students, not programs just for the low achieving students. We want all of our students in all of the programs, but that does require reaching and building capacity of all our educators.
Right. Are you working with SBTA?
Absolutely.
You are? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And finally, I invite Nisha and Sharon to talk about recommendation number 4 from the advisory.
Good evening, Trumanisha Singer, Vice Principal over at Pacific High School. And our recommendation number 4 was to expand opportunities for collaboration amongst teachers and staff and for engaging families and community members in planning and supporting students' educational goals. So in order to reach that, we are planning as our action steps to make sure that we are collaborating with the community members in those plannings of those goals. And Sharon's going to speak a little more about that.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Mordetsky. I'm a school psychologist at San Gregorio High School. Our action steps were as previously shared in transformative leadership. The advisory recognizes a need to create a system to increase special education student enrollment at their home school so parents, students, and families can attend school-related events. This will also reduce transportation for parents and students.
The advisory also recommends that the Special Education Department work with the Community Engagement Plan work groups to ensure that special education needs are included in the new improved strategies. The advisory recognizes the importance of providing interpretation services during IEPs that are understandable. The Special Education Department is training paraprofessionals and other bilingual staff to interpret it with accurate IEP terminology during IEPs, thus providing high levels of customer service.
Special education will partner with our family engagement centers that are already located at each of our 6 comprehensive high school campuses so that they become a local parent center for parent meeting workshops, webinars, and virtual meetings, therefore allowing an opportunity for parents and families of our special education students to be more informed about the IEP process and what to expect.
Thank you.
So once again, I want to thank our advisory members as well as our larger advisory. So our participants gave in countless hours of coming together and helping us to put together, work through these recommendations. And it wasn't to rubber stamp, this is what we should do, but actually provide us with clear insight. So we wanted to have a cross-section of different providers who have impact on the different students' lives so they can give us perspective and help us to develop the next steps. And so as we continue to work through this work with this advisory and also inviting other people moving forward to make sure that we meet those benchmarks and make sure that we see these plans and ideas to fruition. So as a department, we firmly believe that early intervention and prevention is key. We have organized ourselves financially and structurally to ensure the work is thoughtful and balanced. And through the reorganization, which didn't add any additional cost, I believe that we will be in a position to better meet the needs of our students, families, and special educators. The greatest benefit of this model is the intentional focus on good first teaching and instructional support through the prevention and early intervention. So as you heard, I want to be able to let you know that I'm responsive to the emotions and to making sure that we're providing excellent customer service for our parents. And I also want to let you know that the goals of a department is to develop systems and protocols so that we will be in a position to never have to hear those stories again, because we want to be in a space to make sure that our teachers have top quality training, as well as we as a department are being responsive and early to the things that could potentially be a problem, and to address our needs systematically. So if you look at our organization, we've organized ourselves at the top to be able to meet those needs. So we have an administrator that is directly responsible for making sure that we take care of our students in early academics. So our preschoolers, our early language skills, our early intervention programs, and specifically looking at making sure we're tracking those students and that we're providing them with the necessary supports before they even enter into our system. And we have strategically, with current personnel, divided ourselves into 2 houses once our child enters our school sites. So we're going to look at our academic side of the house, and then we'll look at our SELPA side of the house. And for academics, oftentimes when we're looking at students with special needs, we forget that they are students first and that their core instructional program and their needs need to be met in the classrooms. So like Dr. Mitchell always says, we have to build the skill and knowledge of our teachers to make sure that our students are receiving the educational opportunities that they deserve. And so that goes for our RSP teachers who are servicing our students within a gen ed classroom, as well as our special ed students who may be special ed teachers who may be servicing those students in separate spaces. However, we feel like that their academic program needs to be top-notch, the training needs to be top-notch, and the instruction needs to be intentional. And so therefore, we have our assistant director focused specifically on that, as well as working on engaging families to make sure that we are also meeting the needs of those parents as well, because they also have insight on what we should be doing in those classrooms. So special education goes hand in hand with compliance. So those 2 assistant directors will work in collaboration. However, we feel like there is a specific need to look at compliance through the lens of what our state is saying that we should be doing with compliance as it relates to IEPs, legally defensible IEPs, services, and being responsive to the needs of our students as it relates to us being our own SELPA. So that's unique in the sense that as a district, we're responsible also to make sure that we're compliant with the state. And so in order to do that, we need to be specific about how we are attacking, looking at what IEPs need, how we are attacking, making sure that we are fully staffed when it comes to having enough speech pathologists and psychologists. So those are specific areas as it relates to compliance that need specific oversight. And I feel like with the separation of those 2, that we will be able to drill down and actually get to a place where we are not only a premier district, but we're destination, and then we will be at a place to where we provide exceptional service to all of our students at all times. And so with this model that we have already put thankfully, we've put our money behind. We've also placed our personnel behind. We believe that moving forward, that the department will be, as I like to call it, destination special education.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I'm just going to close up, and then we'll get for some questions. Board, as you've heard, there's a lot of time and commitment that's gone into the strategic plan development. And Dr. Flores, you must have been looking at my notes, because my next statement is that we know that change doesn't happen with a plan, that it's an actual development and implementation of the plan and a collective commitment of the team that makes the change happen. And I assure you, ever since I've been here, this is starting my 4th year, there are special education educators out there, and they are hungry and ready to offer our children an exclusive learning experience. They're excited to work with their general education peers and to partner with our parents to improve outcomes for our scholars with special needs. The plan just serves simply as an initial guide to a vision of a seamless educational system for all, but it's the people who will bring the vision to fruition. And so now we answer any questions you may have.
Okay, great. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with Dr. White, and we're going to move along this way. So if Dr. White, if you have any questions or comments, and then we'll move towards Dr. Hill, and then Dr. Flores and Dr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you everyone out here tonight for the presentation. Obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of work put into this, and I don't want to say long overdue, but sometimes it's just refocusing what we're doing in our efforts. And there's been a lot of conversation this evening about SPED and our special ed programs, so it's nice to see a plan that's being implemented and put in place. And just a few things to look at and point out. On the very beginning of the presentation, page 3, address the needs of all students as soon as those needs are apparent. I think we've heard a lot about that tonight, and so I know myself as a parent, I've been one of those individuals that's gone through some challenges with one of my children in the district. It actually is what drove me to become a board member. And I know we've had some folks here, Gil was here and he's not here no more, but I was going to thank him as well, because I've been there, and that's what a number of us on the board are here for as well, not just for our students with disabilities, but all of our students. So something to keep in mind. I love the quick start guide. that you're putting together. I deal with this on a daily basis myself.
We'll share it with you, Mr.
I was going to ask
Dr.
for
White.
that, absolutely. Matter of fact, I highlighted that to take back to my own practice. And, you know, one of the biggest challenges we found, just in education alone, is our site administrators, you know, who maybe necessarily weren't wanting to know a lot about special ed or wanting to go into special ed, but when you're a site administrator, you need to know about special ed. And that is a huge challenge for administrators, especially when they wanted to be K-12 or middle school or high school, and they went for an admin credential and maybe a single subject or multiple subject, and then all of a sudden they're hit with this huge area of accountability of SPED. So it is great that they have that as a resource, obviously, in ongoing training, because one of my biggest concerns is we have this plan. You know, we develop it with all of our community input, our staff as well. You know, we look at it from the executive board and as a school board, and then how does that trickle down to the site? You know, how does that work at the site level in regards to accountability and follow through? And I think we heard a little bit tonight to say, okay, we need to focus on that. And, you know, obviously we're looking at relationships. And so I think for me, I think we have an amazing plan moving forward. And also, let me say, an amazing team. You know, I know we've done a lot of revamping in regards to leadership. And one of my sayings is, and I know Dr. Marsden says this as well, is it all begins and ends with leadership. We really need to own that and drive the practice and policies as well as the school board. So for me, it's really the relationship, though, at the site level, okay, where our teachers and our staff are working directly with our students and our community and our parents. That's really where we have a great impact. Anytime I've had concerns with maybe our programs or accountability issues or something maybe we weren't doing right, when you have a great relationship with parents, it helps, because we're not perfect. We know that. I'm still learning after 20 plus years in education, and just sitting with the DHH teacher today and having her educate me more about DHH, because that's a new field to me. And so, but when those challenges come with our parents, when we listen to them, we involve them in everything, and we're compassionate to them, it makes a huge difference. And when we're not, it makes a huge difference. So it could be a huge difference good, or it could be a huge difference challenging and negative. So for me, I love the plan. I love what we're doing as an organization and district. And you know, we got called out today as a board. And I respect that, but at the same time, I know all of us here are here for all students. And a number of us here have dealt with students with disabilities. So those of you out there in the community, please know that we're not immune to it either. We've had children with disabilities and major challenges in our schools. We've been parents who have had challenges with administration, with staff, but we worked through it, and that's what we're here to do. So thank you to you and the team. I know there was a lot of comments. I try not to say too much, and let me make sure I cover all of my notes before I pass it on. Oh, I did see some data. I love numbers, and God bless you. And the correlation between English learners at 26.1%, and then also scholars who are students with special needs of English learners at 26.5%. That's kind of just a number that jumps out at me, because that's they're very close, and it's a significant number. We're talking about a quarter of our students. So just something in mind for me to think about. You know, is there a correlation there? Not necessarily about maybe disability, but just a what's the word I'm looking for? Just a learning gap or a learning barrier by language rather than disability. So that's always something I want to make sure that we're looking at, that it's not necessarily a disability, more of a language barrier. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Flores?
Yeah, I want to thank you. I didn't get the memo to wear blue, but I did wear
you
blue.
did.
I would have done the
You
same.
did.
I think she had a little input from
So
someone.
I'm happy to be blue today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your strategic plan. Been in education a long time, and if we don't have a strategic plan, we don't know where we're going, and we don't know what the needs are, and you know, to set up a plan, and it's a big task. This is a very big task, and it's very comprehensive. It's going to be a big challenge to implement. I mean, it's so hard for us. You know, to see the plan, and, you know, we want to get in there and, okay, implement it, you know, what are you doing, all of that. And so hopefully, we can support you in the implementation and so forth. I'm happy to see that you're going to develop standards of practice handbook so that everybody shares the same knowledge about what the expectations are. These are the standards, and this is what we expect, and so forth. The Quick Start Guide is also very important, and not just for the principal or the vice principal, but for the whole team, for the teachers, the parents. And I like that you're going to have a digital platform so that we can all access it and so forth. Because most of the complaints I get from parents is that we don't follow procedures, and then people don't know the procedures, and they're very frustrated. They get very frustrated with us, and so hopefully this will address that, and that we can, be fair in our procedures and in our practices. IEPs are very complex, and so it's really, really important that we get this right. And you all know that these are the complaints that parents raise, right? I mean, that's the number one. That's why we have advocates that come, and and that's why we have to pay out so much money, because somebody didn't follow an IEP. And I hope that we move quickly so that we get. I mean, one of my questions was, when is this Quick Start Guide going to be finished? Do you know when it's going to be done?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to have it done by, so we have a prototype done. And so we're really just, actually the team is working with the graphic design.
I can't hear you.
I said we have a prototype done.
Uh-huh.
The team is just working with a graphic organizer right now. So we're looking at next week to have like a sample.
Okay.
Because we also want to vet it with our constituent, or with our principals to see
Right,
if this is helpful
right.
or not. But like a final product,
Right.
we hope to have it done by next week for the Quick Start
And I'm
Guide.
glad to hear that our principals and VPs are going to be on board, but there are schools that don't have VPs. So does that team include like a program specialist, or who else is going to be doing the IEPs? I mean, because there's a lot of schools that don't have VPs.
Right, so whoever that designee would be. So principal and whomever that designee is, correct.
So a designated person.
Yes.
Okay. And I want to know what do we have in place when compliance falls through the cracks? I mean, what do we have in place when we fall through the cracks on our checks and balances?
Right, so that's an area why we have separated out the two assistant directors, because before one person was trying to do compliance and program, and so you're trying to do both things. You're not doing either of them very well. This year, now that we're very happy to have our new person on board, we will be creating reports that then they will be pulling monthly to then show Dr. Lundy on how our schools are doing with the various compliance pieces and the timelines and the protocols, so that we can intervene earlier. So when I had said, there's going to be some schools that are always doing well, and then there's going to be those who need additional supports. The data is going to help us know which schools need those additional supports and which don't. So we're developing those reports with our SACE program.
So
Does that
you're
answer
going to
your
address
question?
principals and VPs that aren't familiar with the protocols so that they can be supported and so forth. Because if they're not familiar with the protocols, then they're going to, fumble and stumble and not go through the compliance procedures.
Exactly. So step one, once that the Quick Start is done, is then we'll do a training. So everyone will get trained on that, on the basics of it, so that they know how to follow it. And then we'll start the monitoring, and then those who need extra will get that extra support.
So who's going to monitor the principals and the vice principals?
The assistant director will be developing it through that.
Directors will?
Correct.
Okay. So I have here, who's responsible for conducting the overseeing of the compliance criteria of the principals and vice principals?
And so that's the assistant
directors,
director.
assistant directors?
Correct. And then and then Dr. Lundy looks at it, and then if we have some that need additional, she gives it to me, and then I share it with my peers who evaluate the principals, so that they can go in and they can support. Because again, it's not a special ed piece, it's all of us.
I have two more comments and concerns. I heard you say that you're going to have these protocols in Spanish as well. or not?
Which protocols are
For
you
the
referring-
parents.
So I just took a note because I think that's a great idea that so the Quick Start, the handbook was for staff.
Right.
And the Quick Start is for principals and assistant principals. But we can very easily, with our parents, develop a Quick Start guide for our parents in Spanish.
I think that would be
and
really
then a parent
important.
handbook.
I think that would be really important to have that. Not as complex, but
exactly
as, you know, so that they know what the procedures are and what's going to happen. Because when parents come to me, their complaints are, I don't know what's supposed to happen.
Exactly.
You know, I just go in and I'm, you know, oblivious to, I have no idea. So I think that would be great if we could do that.
That and Dr. Flores, so we will do that so that we have something codified and people can refer back to
Right.
it. And remember that we have those workshops that our CAC is also putting on,
Right.
and that's also to keep our parents informed of their rights and
a lot of
responsibilities.
parents can't go to those workshops, so I think that if we have that available on even you know, digital platform or maybe even a podcast where they could you know, see it. You know, they just punch something and then they can get it orally if they can't read or have no access to computers. I think that would be really good.
Great idea.
It would be good customer service for our parents.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing is I also like data, like Dr. Wyatt. And, you know, I always like to have the raw numbers. So when you present percentages, like on page 10, and also 10, 11, and 12, well, all the different numbers that you have. You
You're
do
right,
have
Dr.
raw
Flores.
numbers over here on page 12, but it would be really helpful to us, and also on page 13, that you would also put the raw numbers in there so that we know. And then, you know, we don't know, and I like that you put speech therapy and so forth, right? But 16%, I mean, I could figure it out, right? Do the multiplication. But it would be nice for us to know just exactly how many students that is.
You're right, and you always ask that, and we should have done that for you.
Right.
So
It
we'll
could
have
be,
that.
and what are the categories, and what are the different categories, you know, of the kids. So in terms of English learner scholars, you know what, I mean, how many of them are speech?
Exactly.
How many of them are all the different categories that you have?
Yeah.
And also with African American kids as well.
We will get
Yeah.
you that data.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, Dr. Flores.
thank you so
Dr.
much.
Hill?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say to the entire team, you did a wonderful job. And you really do look good in that blue sitting out there. So thank you. I didn't get the memo either, but that's okay. And I'm not, I have with my notes some things that's already been said, so I will not repeat them. But one of the things, you know, being a former principal myself, when it comes to special education, I've always said there must be something else. So I was sitting here thinking, wouldn't it be neat if we could come up with another name like students with exceptional needs?
There you go.
You know, because we're all special ed. I never learned how to change oil in a car. So that made me a special needs student. The other one, and you have some parents there, some very involved parents. I would like to recommend, I'm just making recommendations, don't try to do it, but I would think it would be good if parents came up with a checklist. So when you have an IEP, they can leave that checklist. And if it just say, you know, this was not good, at least you would know. And I know some of the concerns I have gotten there's been an IEP meeting, but they changed it because it's difficult to get everybody together. So I don't know if you had considered an emergency IEP team, so that if the principal is really having a really bad day dealing with other issues, instead of cancel the meeting, there could be a team that could go out, and that way the parent doesn't have to take off work again, and that in itself creates some frustration. I do want to give commendation to Dr. Elliott. I met her, and I think she's going to be really good for the district. And even seeing the students who exited from the special ed program, again, I'm glad to see that special ed isn't a life sentence. And I attended the Community Advisory Council meeting, and there were parents in there and parents really involved. And I don't know if this has been resolved, but I'm sure you're working on it. It almost was like it was the Democrats and the Republicans, because there was one group here and there was one group there, and somewhere in the middle, I think they might have agreed on something. But you know, we just have to be in the same place and work together. So I hope I'm sure that's being worked on. And then, with your Community Advisory Council, do you have all the parents involved, are parents of students who are in our district, or do you have other people who are not? And that's something you can get back to me. But the one thing I want to strongly recommend is that you continue telling your stories. With this young man over here, where is he? Okay. Okay, well, mom's still here at least. But with this young man and the young lady you gave this story about, it's important for us to hear that and for other parents and other staff members. So keep telling those stories. My nephew also, one of my nephews was special needs, and he's now a supervisor with the county of San Bernardino. And I always like to, no, it's not Danny. Danny knows him, but it's not Danny. But I just want to tell you, when I was at San Andreas, I had the severely emotionally disturbed students, and we also would put our students out into the general ed classrooms. And I felt so sorry for this young man, because I said, I think he's feeling out of place, and he might have. But when I walked in, the students overheard me say to the teacher, how is he doing, and should I put him back in the SED program? And there were students who heard me, and they said, Miss Hill, don't move him, because we don't know the answer, he does. So, you know, so we all have gifts, and we need to recognize those gifts. And I appreciate you having students in general ed. So I just want to commend you for the work you're doing, and I know we're not there, and I know Dr. Flores wants to tell me something.
The young man.
Elliot. Okay.
The young man.
I was talking about you, Elliot, but it's good things. So congratulations to you.
Ethan.
He's like,
okay.
What are you talking?
Okay, I'm sorry. I know he was looking like,
He's like,
who
who's
you talking
Elliot?
to?
He's turning around too.
Okay, Ethan. I'm sorry. But I just want to commend you, and just so proud of the direction, and your parents, your staff, everyone here. You know, you all seem to be on the same page, and just appreciate that. And there's no turning around. We're just going to continue moving forward. And I think I heard it from you that we're not there yet. You the commercial, are we there yet? We're not there yet, but we're still in the car, and we're moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
All right,
Hill.
thank you. And then Ms. Rogers?
Thank you. Great presentation. I want to say that. I definitely want to say great presentation, including, and I'm marking things off too, Dr. Hill, so I'm not going to double. But great presentation. They didn't compliment you on your wonderful selfie, though. You did a great job.
No, I cannot do selfies.
I know,
oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
But
I need an accommodation on that one.
Despite that, I'm just happy to see, you know, everyone out tonight. This has been something that we've talked about for quite some time, and we know all of us, as Dr. Wyatt was saying, have a special reason why, you know, our eye is on it and why. And for me, it begins with my brother, who retired 30 some years working in the district, but I can remember when he was younger, he didn't like to talk much, and so immediately they thought he was, you know, special needs. And so when I looked at the numbers, and again, we know you're working on it. I can't say that you're not. I want to just lead positively. But when we still look at those numbers and we see the African Americans sticking out like that, we know that there's some form of problem. And whether it is what Dr. Mitchell reminds us of, professional development, because there's only one way we can get to that, is through training. We have to do that in order for people to catch up with what they don't know. You could be the expert teacher, the expert educators, but there's things that we all don't know. And when we're looking at that, and I appreciate you letting us know that it's in the early, 80% is in the early education. So then I also think about, what does that do, later on, long term? Because if we're over-identifying even earlier, then that is a stigma that's on a student to say, well, this is the best that I can do, or this is how others feel about me. So we still have to look at that. Even though we're saying we're identifying it earlier, that's just as bad as identifying it too late. And so with the trainings and everything that I heard tonight, I think is great, but we definitely want to make sure that we're looking at that, and we're putting some training around that area. The one thing that I thought was missing, and not again in a bad way, but I'd like to hear, I know we have the parent leaders that are here as well, and our job is to hear and to advise and to let you know what we see or hear. And I know there's been concerns, but when the parents stand to the podium and tell me it's okay, I feel good when I know that. And I know you all are doing the expert work, but we never want to overlook the opportunity for them to stand. And I know Miss Erica is there, and when she calls us, we come because we want to support and let them know that their voice is important. And that way we can hear, bring the information back to you all. I've said it to the entire cabinet and to Dr. Marsden. What I know, you'll know. There's no point in me gathering information to come have a gotcha moment. It's not about the gotcha moment. It's about fixing it for our students as early as we can. So, whether it's tonight or whether it's in the future, I do want to also join and hear from the parent leaders. We've saw all of them in action at the full meetings, but when we come here, they're just as they're important as your voice. And for us hearing it on tonight, so that we know, we're all kind of on the same page. And if there's things that we can fix, we want to fix that, because we saw emails. We're trying to respond to things and trying to bring it down so everyone is on the same page. So that's important. So I appreciate that. And lastly, I just want to say and I don't know the answer to this, and maybe you don't have to answer it tonight, but when a student is identified in special education, what does that do long-term with getting into, whether it's a magnet program school, or those are the things that we talked about when we bring back up Richardson and we bring up Middle College, and then on another night we'll talk about how the numbers are bad for the African-American students are not as overpopulated in those particular areas. Is it affecting, because early on we've done this damage and we need to correct it. But your presentation was great. I thank you and I appreciate every one of you. You are closely wearing, without the white, Danny and I's sorority and fraternity. So next time, please make sure that we know or we appreciate you.
All right, great.
And just quickly, Ms. Rogers, our CAC, they've got something ready, but they're trying to get it finalized before they come, so they'll be coming to public comment.
Okay, great.
That'll be happening.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rogers. Mr. Gallo?
Yes, thank you. Well, Danny and I did get the dress code, the blue suits, so guys looking great. I submitted my questions to you in writing beforehand, so I don't want to belabor it and stuff, but I really look forward to, talking about the implementation strategy. I hear where you're going. I think it's great that we've reorganized to focus on the specific target areas and recommendations, and consistent with, I'm sure, the West Ed report and our state, recommendations as well, and look forward to hearing from you.
Yes,
Yep.
but we'll get that to the board, all the questions and the responses in a couple
Great.
of different BCs.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And some were answered tonight
Some,
too, which
yes.
was great. Yeah,
Okay.
so thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Mr. Tillman?
Yes, and I am a former special education student. When I was in elementary school, I stuttered, and I really couldn't get past it. I would get just stuck on words. The more excited I got, the more I would stutter. And they brought in a speech pathologist. Now, this is all from, in hindsight. I didn't know at the time. I really was convinced that I was getting pulled out because I was the smartest kid in the class.
You
And,
were, Mr. Tillman.
And when I went back to class, everybody believed me, because when I got pulled out, the teacher would give me candy. And so when I got back to the class, why'd you get the candy? Because I'm doing so great. And they all wanted to go. But they and after my first grade year, it fixed the problem, and I no longer studied. But it was a great program for me. But I think that's what the whole program is designed for, is extra resources to benefit our kids. And I don't think we should ever lose sight of that. And I think we all need to work together to make it work the best way possible. I really believe, just from my recent experience, there are so many laws governing special ed that you could easily get to a point where you want to adhere to laws, but then you lose sight of what the real focus is, which is benefiting our students. I think I participated in IEPs before, and you can get 10 people in the room. But if you ever get to the point where you're just going through the motions and you're not really there to benefit that specific student, because every student is unique, and they have unique ways that we can serve them. But if you ever just go into the room and just going through the motions, I say it honestly, you should just volunteer yourself out of that meeting, because it's easy to get that feeling that we're just going through the motions and we don't really care, and we just got to do this for Jimmy today, and we're going to get past this and everything's going to stay the same. But if you had all that talent in that room, really focus on solving the problem will get solved. So I hope we never lose sight of that. I know it's easier said than done, because we're going to work and we got real problems in our lives. But in the end, that's what it's for. And we spend a lot of money to do it. And for African American students, tonight, one thing you said, I really would like to see. I'd like to see what those students are in there for compared to the other population of non-African American students, because I think that's what's going to tell the story. There's going to be something glaring there that's going to suggest to us what it is that's putting so much of a higher percentage of African American students in special ed versus the other populations. And then last but not least, I hope we always see it as an asset and a benefit to include the people that come to these board meetings and have concerns about our programs, and make sure we find a true and real way to include them in the process. The worst thing to do is to hunker down and get into a us against them. We had Gil tonight, we had the parent that came down, we had the gentleman in the back who's come down and is passionate. That passion can only help us if we use it in the right way. So it's up to you as the administrators to make sure, even when there are personal attacks, that you don't take the attacks personal. When a person points to one of my assistant superintendents or the superintendent and says something crazy about them, in my mind, I'm thinking that's why they get paid the big bucks. If they can't take it, they shouldn't be there. Because that's part of the process. But you can't take it personal where you get that personal attack and therefore throw everything else out. You don't take in any of the other information that we can use to truly benefit the students. Because in the end, that's all we care about. That's all we should care about, is the students. When Gil comes down here and when he purposely said the board has failed, he's going to say that. But in the end, I'm looking past that and saying to myself, there is an issue here. How can we work together to get past this? How can we work together to use this as an example to serve even more students? I think in the end, that's what we're all here for today. And as long as we don't get hung up on personality issues with each other, then we'll always be able to work together. And so I just encourage all of it. I know it's not easy. It's much easier said than done. But in the end, I think we can do it because we all care about our students. And anybody any of our young people that we're servicing, I think this is the time in their life when we do things to them that's going to dictate their success for the rest of their life. So whatever it takes for us to do it, I hope that we're all on the same page and willing to do it. And so I think everyone in this room is one big team. Thanks for the presentation tonight. I have a lot of respect for all the work that all of you do in education. I try to volunteer to go into a class all day, and I lasted about a half hour. I'm gonna be honest with you. So I have just the utmost respect for teachers who can do it every day, day in and day out, and do it with such passion and love for our students. So I commend you on all your work, and hope to see the board continue to work with you guys to give you the resources you need to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. All right, great, thank you. And I do also want to say thank you all. It does take a special person doing this kind of work because they love the kids and they love the work they're doing. I do want to piggyback on what Mr. Tillman mentioned about parents, and that was actually one of the things I wanted to talk about, was even when looking at how we're addressing parents, and parents will be frustrated, parents will be emotional, parents might be triggered by something that you say or do, or a certain movement. And you have to also realize a lot of parents are frustrated, and their only way maybe of showing their frustration is because they've been told no, they've been told you can't do this, we can't have this happen. And so we have to learn how to have ways to communicate with them, even through some type of customer service training that works specifically with parents. The reason why is because at one point I was one of those parents advocating for my own kids and being frustrated with the system and trying to see what I can do. And as Dr. Wyatt mentioned earlier, you know, some of us have. I was one of those. My son was being retained twice. I advocated even back then. And then he had an IEP, and then he had to have someone follow him, and he was frustrated. He was, by the time he got into high school, he was going to be placed in a special day class. And one thing is that it becomes frustrating for them and for the parents is you want to look at what they're good at excelling in. Even if it's that one thing, if they're great at math in that one particular area, you know, put them in areas where they can excel. And so I was one of those parents that pushed for my son to be an avid and to be in that advanced math, and he excelled. And by the time he graduated, that student that was asked to retain twice, I fought them twice here in the school district, and he's now studying computer software engineering at Cal State San Bernardino. So it can happen, but we have to make sure that we see our kids in looking at areas of strength, looking at areas of where they excel in, and making sure we provide that. And with that, I also want to make sure that we are providing those opportunities of higher education or different types of career pathways, even for them. And like I mentioned, it could be something in the arts. It could be a music. It could be singing. It could be so many, dancing. But the things we want to make sure that we find some connection for them at the school level with a purpose. And I do also want to address the misdiagnosis, the dual diagnosis, and I'm glad that you're able to find that there were 22 students?
31.
31, and I wrote 31 students. And so people don't realize students who are both spectrums from special ed to gifted, and then what are we providing them, and what are the resources that we're also helping them advance and reach their full potential. And at the end of the day, it's making sure all these kids, all children in the school district are reaching their full potential no matter what capabilities they have and strengths. So thank you so much for the work that you do. We need to make sure, and that's one thing I want to make sure that I emphasize, how we're communicating with our parents and as part of the training as well, so that way we're able to identify certain triggers and passionate arguments that it may be perceived, but it could just be downright they're just frustrated, and then how to deter that. So thank you. And I also wanted to congratulate the family that was here too. Ethan, it's not an easy road, but definitely for the whole family, you know, you're the biggest advocates, and so I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We do have
Thank you.
one public comment.
And we do have one public comment.
The board welcomes back to the microphone Alfredo Agüero on item 8.1.
The reason I'm waiting for the translator is because I like people who's watching on TV understand what happened here. Nuevamente, buenas noches.
Good evening once again.
Todo lo que escuchamos, espero que las recomendaciones que están haciendo se hagan realidad y que sean a beneficio de nuestros estudiantes.
Everything we heard tonight, I hope that the recommendations are taken care of and that they are for the benefit of our children.
Yo no estoy en contra de nadie personalmente. Ya usted lo mencionó, señora Medina, que el sistema es el que queremos componer.
I'm not
El sistema
against
es el que tiene
anyone
un problema.
personally. As Ms. Medina mentioned, the system is broken, and that's what needs to be repaired.
Pero a veces nosotros como humanos también cometemos errores que tenemos que arreglar.
Sometimes we as humans make errors that we have to fix.
Quiero comentar que uno de los problemas que nos tienen que empezar a dar información correcta y completa es como lo que pasó con el plan del presupuesto anual.
One of the issues that we have to fix is giving the correct information. For example, the annual budget.
Vinieron y lo presentaron y pasó, pero cuando tuvimos la reunión no se nos dio la información completa.
The budget was presented, but once we had the meeting, the information was not given fully.
En el comité asesor de la comunidad se han violado todas las leyes de la Acta Brown, de las reglas de Roberts y los estatutos.
In the committee,
Del comité asesor de la comunidad.
the community accessory meeting, all of the regulations have been broken, including, which ones?
Estatutos de bylaws.
The statutes and bylaws, and the
Roberts.
Roberts Act as well. The Roberts Rules.
Roberts Rules. Por eso es que pienso yo que lo que tenemos que empezar a hacer es tenemos que empezar a educar a las personas que van a estar a cargo en ese comité.
That's why I believe that we need to educate and train the people who are in charge of this committee.
Necesitamos que las personas que estén a cargo de ese comité trabajen para los padres,
We need the people in charge of this committee to work for the parents
para poder ayudar a los estudiantes.
in order to help the students.
Tenemos dos puntos bien importantes que están en los estatutos de las sugerencias que hicieron los padres.
We have two important points that are in part of the parent statutes.
Yeah, the parents make some recommendations and these 2 points very
We're
important.
making recommendations in these 2 points.
So estos 2 puntos es
These 2
que
points
sean
are
más miembros de ese comité,
that there's more
que puedan
members,
votar.
more voting members of that committee.
No se está tomando en cuenta.
Those are not taken into account.
Queremos que cuando voten el voto sea abierto.
We want the votes to be open.
Que no queremos que pongan en un papelito el nombre y luego se van alguien allá atrás a decir fueron tantos y estos fueron los que ganaron. Queremos que sea abierto.
We want the voting to be open. We don't want names to be put on paper and then turned in as ballots.
No queremos que sean parte de un comité que va a ser manejado por el Departamento de Educación Especial.
We don't want the committee to be part of that's being governed by the Special Education Department.
Queremos que los padres tengan voz y la voz lo dan ellos, son los que están en el comité.
We want the parents to be the voice, and they're the ones who are part of the committee.
Quiero decir que no estoy en contra de lo que está pasando porque sinceramente espero que todo esto se componga.
I want to say that I'm not against everything that's happening. I really sincerely hope that everything changes for the better.
Y otra de las cosas que quiero poner en claro es que el equipo de trabajo del Task Force
Another thing I want to address is that the team for the task force,
nosotros pedimos que se nos permitiera que hubiera padre en el gabinete.
we asked for parents to be part of the cabinet.
Todo lo que hicieron fue dejarnos entrar a 5 padres de familia a la reunión, más ni un padre está en el gabinete. Son
No.
puros administradores.
The only thing that happened was that they allowed the parents to be part of the meeting, but there was no parents part of the cabinet.
En el primer evento que yo participé, no había traductores para los padres que llegaron, que fuimos como 6 de 100 gentes que estaban ahí.
In the first meeting that I attended, there was no translators, no interpreters. There was
Para
10
los padres.
for the parents, the Spanish-speaking parents there.
Son cosas que a veces pensamos que las personas como yo, por venir a decir lo que está pasando, somos conflictivos, somos la persona indeseable, somos la persona que nadie quiere acercársele.
Sometimes people think, for example, people like me, that I'm a conflicting person or I'm problematic.
Por eso la señora que vino aquí conmigo, la señora Blanca, mis respetos para ella, que tuvo el valor de venir y hablar lo que tuvo que decir.
That's why, for example, the lady that came to speak with me, Blanca, she had the bravery to speak her mind up here.
Porque para venir a decir, gracias por todo lo que hacen, todo lo que están haciendo está perfecto, todo está muy bonito, cualquiera viene a decir eso.
Because anyone can come up here and say, you guys are doing a great job and everything is perfect.
Pero cuando venimos a decir lo que está pasando, se nos ataca.
But usually when we come and say the truth and what's really happening,
Represalias.
we get attacked.
E intimidación,
We get reprimanded or intimidated.
al grado de que le echen a uno hasta la policía para quererlo sacar de un evento por estar diciendo la verdad.
Even to the degree of calling police and being escorted out of an event.
Yo no he mentido en nada de lo que he dicho.
I haven't lied in anything I've said.
Todo lo he dicho con los papeles que ellos mismos nos dan.
Everything I've said based on the forms that have been handed out.
Quisiera que de hoy en adelante esto cambiara
I'd like for from here moving forward that these things
y que los
change
padres empezaran a recibir los servicios para sus hijos.
and that parents start to receive services for their children.
Porque no es justo que vengamos a pedir algo que nos corresponde recibir.
Because it's not fair that we have to come and ask for something that should be given to us.
La única manera de aprender esto es sabiendo nuestros derechos, nuestras responsabilidades.
And the only way to know this is to learn our
Pero
rights and our responsibilities.
parece que el saber eso
But it
nos
seems
hace
like
culpables
knowing that makes us guilty
por venir a pedir lo que nuestros hijos necesitan.
for coming to ask for what our children need.
Para todos ustedes, por favor,
And for all of you,
ayúdenos.
please help us.
No nomás es este distrito el que tiene estos problemas.
It's not just this district that has these
Esto lo
issues.
veo en todos los distritos donde estoy trabajando.
I see this in all the districts that I work in.
Estoy yendo a Coachella Valley y a San Diego,
I go to
a
Coachella Valley,
Lancaster,
to San
hasta allá estoy
Diego,
yendo.
to Lancaster. I go
Por
all
estos
the way over
mismos
there
problemas.
for these same reasons.
Por favor,
Please.
vamos a hacer algo para el bienestar de nuestros estudiantes,
Let's
sus
do something
estudiantes, porque son de ustedes.
For the betterment of our
Gracias.
students. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, hold on. Mr. Tillman? Go ahead.
Just something, a question. You mentioned about, I'm not familiar with the process, but I heard you say you had a concern about ballots, and you'd rather it not be a secret ballot, but is that when you're saying if you're nominating somebody for a office, say in the committee, and you're gonna have a vote, you don't want them to write it on a piece of paper who they're gonna vote for? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we want that open.
But you do.
We can put the name on the board,
Yeah.
and then we just who vote for this person and make it open.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you do realize when you do it that way, people get intimidated. If you're sitting in the room, I know you don't see yourself this way, but a couple people might be afraid of you. So they would be afraid to vote a certain way if they had to do it where everybody could see it. But they would vote their true heart if they're able to write it on a piece of paper. I could easily vote against Mr. Gallo by writing it on a piece of paper. I wouldn't want him to know it by raising my hand.
This was a recommendation
That's
from
what
the
it comes
parents,
down
not for
to.
me.
Huh?
That was a recommendation from the parents, not for me.
Yeah, but I'm telling you that I've been in organizations. If you allowed, now the only concern would be if you thought there was some type of fraud or it wasn't a fair process, or somebody was stuffing the ballot. I can understand that, but you can put controls in place for that. But I really do think that that people feel a lot more comfortable being able to cast their ballot and keeping it to themselves. That's every organization I've ever been a member of. That's the way it's done. Even us as board members, people vote for us,
Right.
and it's secret. Every election there is secret. Now, once you become a board member, we have to cast our vote in public. But the people that vote to put us on these boards, their vote is secret, and their vote wouldn't be the same if it wasn't secret. For a lot of people, just a point, just something to think about.
Estoy de acuerdo con lo que está diciendo,
I agree with what you're saying,
Okay.
pero no fue decisión mía ponerlo ahí.
but it wasn't my decision to
Fueron
make
los
this
padres.
comment. These are comments from the parents.
All right, thank you.
So, no. Lo podemos poner a consideración,
We can take that into consideration,
pero mínimo que se consideren los puntos que están pidiendo los padres. No puede ser que siga siendo un solo porque ellos dijeron.
we also want you to consider what the parents said just because we want to be heard.
Ese es un punto que usted está notando,
That's the point that you're making,
pero hay muchas cosas que no se están tomando en consideración de lo que están pidiendo los padres. Nada de lo que están pidiendo los padres está tomando en cuenta.
but none of the items that the parents are requesting are being taken into consideration.
But I understand what you're saying, but
Pero tienes que ver, I just need to mention that, but you also have to recognize, tienes que saber de que los padres que están ahí, es por lo que estaba oyendo de que hay una división. There's a kind of like a division, but then that means it's not necessarily all parents that are feeling that way, because I can see certain parents' frustration as well. También tiene que ver cómo hablas y cómo se pasa la información, how you pass the information to the parents. And so I could see nods from here, and just making sure that we recognize all the parents within that group and not undermine, we don't want to, it seems like it's divided. We have to find some unity, and saying that, it's them, the parents. At the end of the day, they're the ones that decide. Ellos tienen que saber que ellos tienen la decisión de una manera u otra, y ellos deciden cómo funciona.
Sí.
Yeah.
Una cosa nomás también quiero contestarle de que antes de que yo viniera, y lo sé por padres que estaban involucrados, que eran...
Pero recuerda que antes no teníamos programa bien.
Habían como
So we didn't
4
have
o
a
5
big program
padres
back in the
en los
day.
eventos. Ahora con el señor Gritón que vienen, se les llenó. Tal vez hoy el show de la reunión, pero llega más gente.
One thing before we had these meetings, this didn't happen. The meetings don't get filled. Maybe before with just the one yelling man.
Tal vez lo que pasa es que necesitaba que empezara a haber un movimiento
Maybe there
malo
needs to be a
o
movement,
bueno por
whether
mi
it's
lado,
good or bad,
pero está empezando.
but it's starting.
Y eso es lo que vale. Sinceramente, estar dormidos, ¿de qué sirve?
And that's what's important, because
Despertar
being asleep, we
a
need
la realidad
to
es
wake
un
up to
poco
reality.
brusco, pero nos
It might-
lleva a un punto.
It might be a little bit rough, but it'll
Los cambios.
take us to the point of change.
Buenos o malos, pero que sean cambios, que no siga igual como estaba.
Good or bad, but let there be change.
Por último, nomás les voy a robar un poquito de tiempo, es una cosa que está pasando. A los padres se les están dando borradores a que firmen los IEPs como borrador, no se les está dando el reporte final. Yo lo he visto.
One thing that's happening is for the IEP results for parents.
Entonces son cosas que tenemos que empezar
We
a
need to work
cambiar
on.
y ellos lo pueden hacer, ellos son los que tienen el poder y ellos los que tienen la manera de arreglarlo.
I'd like to interrupt for a minute. He said that the drafts of IEPs are being given to parents to sign, and he doesn't think that that's proper.
The draft,
The draft, yes.
Okay.
and
muchas gracias.
incomplete reports. So they sign it in Spanish, they don't know, in English, and it's a draft. So, you can change it. Why they give it to them to sign? I don't see the point.
It's not in Spanish?
No, en inglés. En español tengo padres que tienen hasta 6 meses, más de 6 meses que no se los han dado.
The Spanish translation could take up to 6 months for the parents to receive it.
And they have to sign it?
Si no lo firman, no se puede implementar.
If it's not signed, they can't implement the IEP.
Ese es el problema.
That's the problem.
Entonces necesitamos empezar a trabajar en eso porque sinceramente
So we need to start working on that.
es como yo ir a comprar un carro y me ponen un interés que no lo quiero, pero no lo
It's like
no lo
me buying
entiendo,
a
lo
car.
firmo, ¿qué es lo que va a pasar?
And I sign for interest that I'm
Muchas
not aware
gracias,
of.
Sí,
Alfredo.
por favor. Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aguado. I just said thank you. I just said thank you. As we wrap this up, I want to thank Dr. Menares and Dr. Lundy and the rest of the blue crew. This is actually a blue suit. It's a very, very, very dark blue suit, but it is a blue suit. I'm right there with you. We know this is a heavy lift. We know there's a lot of work left to be done, but we know we've got the right team in place to do it. We look forward to a very bright future in terms of the services that we provide our students along that continuum so that they all, I think I heard the word brilliance a number of times, so that we recognize their brilliance and help them to manifest it. So thank you very much for the presentation. It was a long one.
Thank you. And board, I failed to do this earlier, and I apologize, but they've hung it. 2 of the 3 have hung in there. We have some onboarders with us this evening, going through their onboarding for their new administrative positions. Victor Portillo, who is the new vice principal at Rodriguez Prep, did have to go home and get to his family, but we want Kimberly Roble, new principal at North Verdemont Elementary School, to stand up, as well as Lauren Wild, new principal at Highland Pacific Elementary School. So thank you for hanging in there with us, ladies. Okay, great. And before we move into 9.1, we do have one public comment that turned in a card later. If you can come up.
Board Board welcomes Joette Campbell.
And you have 5 minutes or less.
Thank you Thank you for this opportunity. I know it was late. Of course, I had it right here.
If you can hold on just for a bit, because it seems like...
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm here representing Margaret Fortune, founder of Hardy Brown College Prep. Consistent with the legal affirmations on page 30 of the Hardy Brown College Prep Charter Petition, Hardy Brown College Prep does not discriminate on the basis of any of the characteristics described in Ed Code 220, including nationality, race, ethnicity. While we appreciate any any member of the public's right to make public comment, we will vigorously defend Hardy Brown College Prep against false statements. Hardy Brown College Prep has a well-established complaint process, which we follow consistently. We investigate all complaints thoroughly. Anyone who has an issue with the school is welcome to avail themselves to it. My name is Joette Spencer Campbell, and thank you, and I have a card if that person still has concerns and needs any assistance.
He's still here, so...
Yes, he just raised his hand. There you go.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, great. So then we're going to go ahead and move along and move to 9.1. So 9.1, report by San Bernardino Teachers Association. Ashley left. Okay, great. 9.2, report by California School Employees Association. Do we have anyone left? I thought I saw him earlier. 9.3, report by Communication Workers of America. Okay. 9.4, report by San Bernardino School Police Officers Association. Huh? Okay, they had to leave. Comments from school board members, and we're going to go ahead and start from Mr. Tillman's side. Move down, Mr. Gallo, and then Ms. Rogers, and so forth.
I just want to say, I was driving into work today and went past Palm Elementary School and saw Palm. But actually, I was driving by as the school was letting out, and it was just a joy to see the students with their violins, and some of them had the buckets with the drumsticks in it. And just to reaffirm that our music program is going strong. It's just always a good sight to see. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I do want to, and I mentioned it to Mr. Tillman about this, and this one didn't come my way, but came by way of another board member mentioning, and he didn't mention it, but we do definitely want to make sure that we're on the same page with what we're telling the community about facilities usage. You know, when we get those complaints, I know the things that we've said here as a board, you know, our willingness and the safety and wanting our community to be able to access the schools. And then on the flip side, we do know we want our schools to stay nice and clean, and, you know, and so that's part of the contractual agreements. It should be for anyone using any facility. You know, there's rules and regulations. I wouldn't condone anyone coming to our school sites and just leaving trash and moving, you know, just moving on as though it's not their responsibility. But we do want to make sure, just as we mentioned, the PE clothes and those type of things, that the community really get that we're not just saying that just to say it, and then it becomes a complaint, and then we start all over and it looks like we're not working together. So I wasn't sure, you know, Mr. Chairman, but I know you mentioned it, and so I want to make sure that it gets mentioned again for the public, that there is a process. We do support it, but we want to make sure, you know, that we're practicing what we preach. And then secondly, I went to stop by Emerton. There was kind of mix up on the schedule. They wanted me to come and do some things, but anyway, I stayed over there for a while, and I saw at the end of, before the bell rang, or I think the bell had rang, she was a little late, and there was a little young girl, she was a kinder, and she had walked somewhere from Sterling or whatnot, but it was quite a distance, and she was sweating profusely, and so I asked them what, where was she coming from? And they indicated, her longer distance walk, and they were waiting to determine if there was, what do we call it, empty seat or whatever that's called. And it's just like here with our SBX that we have throughout San Bernardino. I never see things packed. And again, not trying to bypass rules, but just bringing that before us again to realize I'd rather see a child on a bus, even if they get picked up. I think Dr. Hill she was kinder, they said. She said I think the parents walk her a certain portion, but the rest of the way she goes. And there's many kids. I mean, I see them all the time out there walking, which is what I mentioned before, why I wish that, I know, Janie, you had mentioned that it was costly or boundaries and things like that, when you reviewed it before, but it is really an issue because safety, we know that we just lost some students again over an unfortunate situation like automobile vehicles, and we know that sometimes there's bus crashes, but we want to minimize those things, and if we can get students on buses, we know they make it to school, and I think it would even increase attendance, because if you're on the bus going to school, the likelihood of you getting off the bus and walking back home is just kind of ridiculous. So, if we can really, really look at that and just, it just kind of broke my heart when I saw the little girl. And she got there late, and then the worst part of it is because she was late, she couldn't get to breakfast. So they had to, and I know they was just given the typical answer, and it wasn't anything against them, but it was like, you got to get to class and then work it out with the teacher. But imagine being kindergarten, saying to your teacher, I'm late. And sometimes, like we talked about earlier, when you're not on your best day, you're just thinking about getting through the day, and it's all about, well, you need to be in your seat and you should have eaten. Well, we all probably should have did a lot of things, but it doesn't happen. So we just got to look at those things. And then lastly, Dr. Volkemer, you might want to carry this message back, but some of the board members, we know that there was the board retreat is coming up, and so we want to reevaluate that, even whether we even need to have it and what our purpose is in having it. It's a full day. Many of us work, and I'm getting the temperature check that a lot of us are just not even kind of got it in our schedule right now, and we're deep into our year, but at the beginning of another school year. So I don't know if we even want to do that right now, but I'm getting a temperature check that I don't think the board members are going to be available, and I don't even think I'm going to be available.
So,
Ms.
Ma'am,
Rogers, I'm not
27th.
available.
I
I'm
didn't
out of the
think so.
country.
That 27th.
You're referring to the 27th?
The 27th. I know Dr. Hill is mentioned. She's out of the country as well. So,
You're not available?
So same
yeah,
thing.
so it's
So I
just
think it's gonna
not.
be
We already have 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we want to just,
I'll relay that to Dr.
and we
Larson.
want to revisit it as to our purpose too.
What's-
That's part of it. So
Okay.
it's not just rescheduling it. I think we want to identify the purpose
I'm going
Thank
to put
you.
revisit purpose before any rescheduling.
before we
Right,
even
right.
start looking at that as to what we really need to try to accomplish.
Got it.
Thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, Dr. Hill?
Thank you. I just have two comments. I just want to say to cabinet and staff and all of you in the back there, you almost look like you're poker dealers waiting for customers. But but just want to say thank you for the good work you're doing, and looking at those football fields and driving past these schools and seeing how good they look. I smile every time. And so just want to commend all of you for the good work you're doing. My only negative thing is not to all teachers, but to some teachers. And again, it's regarding homework. Studies come out again saying homework's not probably worth the paper it's written on. So I just want to say to teachers who say, well, I always give homework, make sure there's a purpose with it. If it's not a purpose, you might want to take one thing, not only off your plate, but off the student's plate. Thank you.
Dr. Hill, I have to comment on what my granddaughter Zoe says. Nana, why do I have to do this again? I already know it. And I go, well, it's called busy work. And so you're going to learn perseverance from doing it. But anyway, I only have a couple of comments. and Dr. Volkmer and Janie, I'm just curious, and I see that Tom Pace is here. I'm curious about, I know we have a strategic plan for facilities. So, and you said it was going to be, we were going to relook at it and so forth. So I wonder if we're accommodating, maybe you told us, but I'm not quite aware, and maybe you can apprise us about our academies at our different high schools. If there are facilities that we're going to be including in there, I'm not quite sure. I don't recall it because you presented it, about 5 or 6 months ago. And so I really want to raise to see if we're doing, where we're going with it and an update. I would really love that. And also...
if I may, specifically with CTE in mind?
Right, yeah, with career tech, yeah, with our academies. In our high schools, what are our plans for the different academies in terms of facilities? That's number one. Number two, in terms of the seal of biliteracy, I know that we're doing really well as a district, and we don't get to see the kids because they take the test late. But I really would like to know from all our, the data of how many kids met the seal of biliteracy, and which high school scored the highest or had the most. And I'd like to recognize them as a board, because I think we did a lot. Throughout the state, I think we probably might have the most. I'm not quite sure. And board, I don't know if you know the state criteria for seal of biliteracy. It is rigorous. You have to get a score of 3 or 4 on the 11th grade CASP, the English language arts test. You have to have an overall GPA of 2.0 or higher. In world languages, you have to have proficiency in 1 or more languages other than English, a score of 3 or higher, and the world language AP exam, a score of 4 or higher on the world IB exam, a 4-year course of study in the same world language with a 3.0 or higher to demonstrate oral and written proficiency in the language. They also have to pass our district tests with a score of proficient or higher, demonstrating proficiency in all modes of communication, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And they have to pass the SAT 2 World Language Exam with a score of 600 or higher. And if you're an EL student, you have to demonstrate English proficiency on the LPAC. That is a rigorous criteria. And so I would like to, for us to recognize, our high schools, know how many pass, and whoever got the highest passage rate, let's give them a certificate, or let's do some competition, to get them going. I think it would be wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Flores. So we were up 79 from last year. Last year we had 534 students receiving on the diploma, and Arroyo Valley had 149, the highest.
Wow. Well, I think that would be great. I think it would be great to don't you guys think so, board? Yeah, so anyway. And we can't recognize the students because they're gone, because they're seniors, but we could recognize the teachers and the schools, our foreign language, well, now we call them foreign language, but I think they're world language teachers, if they can come. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right, Dr. White.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'll try to keep my comments brief because we've said quite a bit already. And just to piggyback a little bit off of Vice President Rogers, obviously we had our tragedy in our city with a couple of our students, and one that was a former student with us. And I can't say it enough up here how much, we just need to pay attention and slow down around our schools. You hear me say it pretty much every meeting now. I take my son to school every morning, and boy, is it a challenge just to get him into the parking lot and to get out of there safely, let me say that. So, I know we have our safe routes to schools updates, and, Assistant Chief Donahue's here, and Chief Polino, I've talked to him about this as well. But maybe we get a hard copy update, but maybe just an update, a report on where we're at with our Safe Routes to School, and really what are some of our initiatives and what are we doing to ensure safety around our schools, traffic safety for one, and the safe routes for our kids going to and from school. I know we also have another top 10 item that's addressing safety in front of Pacific High School, and meeting with the city as well and working together to, again, just increase safety around our schools in regards to traffic safety. I don't like comparing us against other districts, but sometimes I have to look at some best practices that are out there. And, fortunately with what I do during the day, I get to travel and see many districts throughout the county and sometimes throughout the state. And, I have to really say we should take a look at some of those districts out there, and I'll give some examples to the chief and deputy chief on how some districts utilize cone patterns and cones at the beginning and the end of the day to control traffic flow. And I've always said that if we just kept at the right turns around our schools, we'd have a lot less congestion problems. If you look at some of our schools, it's left turns into our schools. And I'd like to say that sometimes it's common decency for us to let people in that are turning left for those of us that turn right. Because trust me, I only turn right now because of my experience trying to turn left. Because most people aren't that cordial anymore. And I'm just being sincere and honest that if you're trying to turn left in some of our schools, good luck. Because the people that turn right won't always let folks in, so you have to wait forever. And so it's just a recommendation of mine to take a look at some of those districts on how to utilize cone patterns to control traffic around our schools. Trust me, it's much more efficient, and it definitely is safer. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great, thank you. I just want to mention really quickly, because my son always brings in complaints as a student at San Gregorio High School. And like I mentioned earlier, was regarding the late start time. And I try to let him know, well, the pushback is, because he doesn't understand, well, it's better, we have to do what's better for us. And I was like, yes, but, for some people, it's, having to go to work and so forth, and teachers or parents, and, what do they do if their children is, and so I try to give him the different perspective. And so he ended up getting what's it called, a home class, or where they have, basically it's a class where he doesn't have to go to school, but he goes to school for, No, it's just a home class. It's like 0 period, but he doesn't have any class, so they call it something with a home. And basically they can stay at home, they can stay home. But he still goes early in the morning, and he does his homework in the library anyways. But his complaint, like I mentioned, was the fact that, he gets really tired, his homework at night, and by the time he gets to school, he can't really concentrate. First period, he's basically zoned out. And so I guess that's just, and I tell him sometimes, why don't you come down to the board meeting and bring the issues yourself? And, but he's a really big advocate with regarding some of the things that we should be doing better in our school district. And that's definitely one that he's been pushing for. Other than that, I think we're doing what's best for our kids. And if you see that as board members and those in the audience and those that are watching us from TV, we're really passionate about the education piece and how we're going to improve for all students. And so just because in certain situations we can't necessarily fully address what we have been saying behind closed doors and closed session, just realize that we are completely here for our kids. We have good intentions, and so just keep that in mind, that when you come to the podium, we love to hear your concerns as well. We learn from it. We try to always improve, but just realize that we are doing what's best for the kids, and we do have these conversations sometimes with each other. And thank you so much for everyone, all our teachers and the staff. And so that's just my quick message. So we're going to go ahead in 9.6, comments by superintendent and staff members.
Thank you, Madam President. Just 3 quick comments, board. First of all, we want to give a huge shout out to the helpful Honda dealers. You guys have seen the many advertisements on TV, I'm sure. The local Honda dealership donated more than 750 age-appropriate books to Vermont Elementary School. From preschool to 6th grade, Honda's goal was to make sure every student had a brand new book to take home. So we want to give a big shout out to our helpful Honda dealers. School recognitions, the Educational Results Partnership, which is a nonprofit organization that uses public school achievement data to help improve student outcomes and career readiness, has named 5 San Bernardino City Unified School District campuses to its 2018-19 honor roll for being high-performing schools that improve student outcomes. Congratulations to Hillside and North Vermont Elementary Schools, Richardson Prep High, Rodriguez Prep High, and Middle College High School for receiving that distinction. And then finally, I wanted to just add very quickly on Late Start. As you know, this is something that we've been working on diligently for the last couple of years. I sent you a BC probably a month or 2 ago with an update on where the legislation was, where it looked like it was heading, and what our recommendation was. And so I think I'll send that to you again, just to bring it back into your working memory for September 17th. We are generally well prepared. I would say we've done the guts of the work to be ready to implement should we choose to, or should it be mandated. And so just wanted to share that with you. We'll be resuming our work on September 17th, I believe. We've got 3 meetings scheduled for September, October, November, just to make sure we're fine-tuning any of the technical work that we need to be prepared for. So we thank you for that. And those are all my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Volkemer. We're going to go ahead and go to 10.0, consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All
Any
in
to
favor-
pull?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was already going ahead of myself.
10 what? Okay.
Can't hear you.
10-2-2 and 10-3-1.
10-2-2 and 10-3-1.
Any other items, Dr. Flores?
Yes, I'd like to pull 10.4.
Okay.
I have
Any
a
other?
few.
Yes.
I would like to pull, Ms. Rogers pulled 1022, 10 and 1031, 1032, 1041, 1043, 1045, and 1056.
Oh, my goodness. Say it slower again. Sorry.
All right. I have 1022, 1031, 1032, 1041, 1043, 1045, and 1056.
Now, are all those together or just separate?
All together.
All together. Okay. So let's go ahead and call for the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion carried. Let's go to 10.4.
4.
Really?
Madam President and my colleagues, this one is the sponsorship with California State University San Bernardino for the Grito Mexicano Independence
What is this?
commemoration and
What?
celebration.
Some
And this is in coordination also with the Consul of Mexico. And I would like to propose that we increase it to 2.5, to amend it to 2,500. They invite the whole community, and everything is free, and they're inviting, our community for this, the whole entire committee. And I know that they're in need of financial assistance, and I just, I'm proposing, and I move that we amend it. And if we have can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Any
Chairman.
discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Nay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
motion carried. Let's go to 10 point, thank you, Dr. Flores. 10.22.
Oh, yeah, this is,
Hold on one second.
So moved.
second?
Hold on, I'm not even there yet. Hold on. So it's because I need to read it. So 10.22 amendment, agreement with Young Women's Empowerment Foundation, San Bernardino, California, to provide, it's twice, to provide the Empowered to Excel Parent Education Student Cultural Diversity, Wellness, Academic, and Career Enrichment Program for students at Arroyo Valley High School.
So moved.
Yeah, we second.
Okay, any discussion?
I second it again
No, any
for
discussion?
the second time.
I was saying, any discussion?
My discussion, but not only on 1022, but all that I pulled, I don't want cabinet to do, bless you, to do any additional work. I know a few years ago we talked about the consultants. We would get some information as to what they're doing and the progress they've made. I'm assuming in order for us to look at them over and over again, they're submitting something. We're not just taking the word for it.
Or we know something about it.
Or we know something about it. So I'd just like to recommend that the board, that the cabinet send us what you use to determine they should continue getting the contracts. That's all.
Okay.
I just want to know what they're doing.
Okay,
Is
so
that-
then,
is that unreasonable? Or is it okay?
no,
Good.
and I think that's something that we requested, looking at the outcomes, looking at everything, and I think
Right.
that's what Dr. Volkermer is in process doing.
Good.
Okay. So then, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All's in favor say aye.
Aye.
All's opposed say nay. Motion carried. Let's go to, which one's next? 31, 10.31.
The group.
Okay, so we're gonna bundle 10.31, 10.32, 10.41, 10.43, 10.45, and 10.56.
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All's in favor say aye.
Aye.
All's opposed say nay. Okay, motion carried. Let's go to Ms. Rogers can come
11.
back. Ms. Rogers. Okay, 11.11, action items. 11.1, personnel report number 4, dated September 3rd, 2019. Dr. Volkermer,
As presented.
So moved.
any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All's in favor say aye.
Aye.
All's opposed say nay. Motion carried. Be resolved that the board, that the personnel report number 3, dated September 3rd, 2019, is approved as presented.
So moved.
No, I was just reading it.
Oh.
11.2, approval of the amendments to Board Policy 6020, Parent and Family Engagement, second reading.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All's in favor say aye.
Aye.
All's opposed say nay. Motion carried. Be it resolved that the Board of Education adopts the amendments to Board Policy 6020, Parent and Family Engagement. Okay, so let's go to
11.3, approval of the amendments to Board Policy 6178, Career Technical Education, second reading.
yes, there you go. Okay, so I can have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All's in favor say aye.
Aye.
All's opposed say nay. Okay, motion carried. Be resolved that the Board of Education adopts the amendments to Board Policy 6178, Career Technical Education. 11.4,
Four.
I'm getting there.
So moved.
Board ongoing initiatives
Second.
reports.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Second.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes.
This is for Dr. Mitchell. On the African American Student Achievement, is that now where we had asked to look at the access to like Richardson and because it's no longer in any of the other items, so did it absorb into there?
No, and I'm not sure why it's not on there, but we are still working
Okay.
on that. So
Be-
your request to evaluate and assess the interest and exit requirements for each of our special
Right.
schools. That we're working on that. We're almost done with it. So you'll definitely see it. I'm not sure if it got
Where
absorbed.
it, because it's not in the other, when we get to the other one, so I was wondering, was it absorbed when you?
No, not
okay.
at all. That's a separate issue for
So
us.
we're missing that.
But we're working on it, and we'll have ask Karen to put it back in there. But we're certainly working on it. In another couple of weeks.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
Okay, so then, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. 11.5, Board Top 10.
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion carried. 11.6, Board Follow-Up.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, let's call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. 11.7, future agenda items. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion carried. 12.0, summary board requests. Ms. Janey.
Yes,
Christakis.
so from the special education presentation, we had ensure we don't require students to repeat classes that they've passed because we don't have alternative options for them. And we want to ensure we have what we need to meet our students' needs. Copy of specific action steps of recommendations. Mr. Gallo referenced slide 18, 19, 20, and 21 of the presentation. And those were the action steps of the strategic plan. Share the quick start guide with the board. Develop a quick start and parent handbook for parents. Provide raw numbers for our scholars with special needs, and Dr. Flores referenced slides 10 through 13. Consider a checklist for parents attending an IEP. Update on information around transportation and our open seat policy, and some of the consequences when kids arrive late and they're missing breakfast, so providing an update and looking at our policies around transportation. Let's see, evaluate board retreat and the purpose before rescheduling. Getting an update, our facility update on our CTE programs. And then more information on the seal of biliteracy, the number of students in the high schools and the students that have received the seal of biliteracy. Update on safe routes to schools, take a look at some of other districts and some other best practices that we can incorporate. And look at, send the board some of the contracts that we continue to renew each year and what criteria we're using to renew contracts.
Madam President,
Yes.
Janie, I also wanted to commend and bring the highest seal of biliteracy schools, and also recognize all the other high schools as
Okay.
well. I think we have 7, right, that do the seal of biliteracy, but anyway.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and go to 13.0. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. Do we call for the vote? I always confuse. Aye. Those all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. I always get confused. No, there's no nays. All right, our next board meeting will be wait.
Just a bit longer.
Why does that one say? Okay. So Tuesday, September 17, 5:30 here in the multipurpose room. Good night, everyone.